Okay, I certainly want to welcome you back after that brief break and a new environment here. We're kind of stepping up in the world with some new digs. I think we're going to get spoiled here and expect this for future meetings. Brian, make a note of that for me if you would, on reserving new rooms.
I can understand.
I didn't know it could be so nice out here, but it's this is a great place, and we appreciate the new accommodations, and hopefully we'll have a working microphone system here. Just getting back into business, of course, we have Dr. Peter Messier with us, explaining the exam process with us, and we do have a little bit of different direction than what I think we thought we were going to go with originally. Brian explained to us that it is the intention of the board and administration to administer these exams somewhat similar to how it is now by a third party, independent third party under contract with the state to do so. I don't know that any member of the board here has any discussion about that issue there. I think we're pretty much all in agreement with that.
We all agree with that.
And would probably prefer that as well, to be quite honest with you. We did want to hand back some materials back to Peter that we had because they just don't pertain to the discussion anymore right here, to be quite honest with you. So I'm going to
These are pretty, Mr. McCormick, these are pretty proprietary to Mr. Messier as far as how he does things.
Correct.
Relative to administration. He was willing, I think, I don't want to speak for him, but he was willing to share with the staff if the staff was going to be taking that on. So I think it don't be appropriate to give that back to him.
thank you, Cody.
Rather not, yeah, if you don't mind.
Yeah. Well, we're not even going to talk about those. Mr. Chairman, if I may, I would like to ask, and I don't know that Ms. Martin may have an answer yet. We had asked, part of the dilemma, Mr. McCormick, that we have faced with our examination is the contract that the state of Tennessee has with Mr. Messier as the vendor for administering our exam and so forth, writing the exam, et cetera, says that basically in two particular places that the test items are directed by the board. And then it all says that all items are subject to review and approval by the board for use in the examination. Well, the previous director instructed us that we were to not have any contact whatsoever with Mr. Messier unless it was in this setting right here. And so the question that I have for Ms. Martin is how, and I've asked this question before, how are we supposed to work with the, and I'm going to use the word vendor, not disrespectful to Mr. Messier, the vendor, whether it be he or someone else in the future, to do the job that is necessary for us to do in preparation of this exam so that this exam is not compromised on a live stream video of us doing exam questions.
So I think that the questions you guys had is how to do that while still complying with the Open Records Act. And I know that the preferred answer is gonna, we cannot have all three of you and Mr. Messier discussing the exam offline. I went through the whole act. I know that Mark actually reached out to the comptroller. So as much as I know that that was the preferred method, that really is not a possibility. That being said, there are lots of boards that have this exact same dilemma, and the way they work it out is they have sessions for exam review where the director, the vendor, possibly a consultant, and a board member meet, and they'll have maybe 3 sessions or 2 sessions. So for really large boards, they'll nominate 3 people, 1 to be at each session. Here, you could work it out however you want. So that way, each board member gets to be individually involved, but we can't have like a discussion of all the board members about applications because it falls under board business, and it would have to be open.
But we're not talking about applications, we're talking about examination.
True, but I mean, the examination, it's the same thing. It's not the same thing literally, but the examination and the application is still about licensing individuals, and that would be a violation of the Open Records Act. But there are plenty of options so that the board can direct Mr. Messier. I'm not sure why Nicole told you not to contact Mr. Messier.
Yeah, and I'll just kind of to further, because this was the question. I understand your all's concern on this question, and we've spent a fair amount of time, and Laura has done a lot of research on this question, and frankly, we've sent this up to the top of the chain in state government the folks who really are the experts in the Sunshine Law. And there's really, unfortunately, you're not going to, the three of you all are going to be able to sit. I mean, you would very clearly be in jeopardy of violating the Sunshine Law. I think all the experts would tell you, if you did that, you would be violating the Sunshine Law. Your attorney is telling you that, and I would just strongly urge you to just take that completely off the table, because it's, as I said, they've run this as far up as you can. The foremost expert on the Sunshine Law for the state, who works for the AG's office, has also communicated with us on this issue and has affirmed this. And so, if you do that, anything that you do, if you openly do that, you put yourself in a pretty precarious spot, and they could talk to you about all the implications of that. But I would just to advise you, one, I would always tell you, follow your legal counsel when it comes to Sunshine Law. I mean, I think it's very, very critical, because it puts a lot of things in jeopardy if a violation is found to be had. So I think Laura, though, has come up with some options where you all could really have an opportunity to opine on the subject with the vendor in a way that allows you, one at a time, an appointee of the board, or multiple sessions with each one of you could potentially participate in an individual session with him. You just couldn't do that collectively. And I think there definitely are some creative options that we would could employ to do that.
Well, that's what we've been trying to get to, and that's the roadblock that we've been running into is, the prior director basically said, Sunshine Law, can't do this, can't do that, where what we were trying to do was trying to determine not how to avoid it, not how to break the rules, but how to conform within the rules and still accomplish the goal. Because, it's clear that in some ways that the right hand doesn't always know what the left hand's doing sometimes. For example, like the contract, the language in the contract, the way it says that the board is to interact with the vendor, okay? To me, it says the board, that's the whole board to me, although it may mean at the end of the day, as reviewed by the statute of Sunshine, that it's only one member of the board. So I understand that, but that's where we've been trying to get to, and we've not been successful until today of getting there to have a better understanding, so that we know what we've got to do to move forward.
I think the best way to do that is to have interactions collectively as a board, maybe about the test generally, like we are going to today, and then when it comes time to review the questions, create new questions, all of that, set up sessions, and you each elect to attend a specific session, and that way you can have very direct involvement in the creation of the exam, and we can still comply with the Open Records Act.
Well, the other such scenario there is that the way the vendor contract needs to be set up different. For example, Mr. Messier is not being paid to be here today. I, as a board member, take offense to that, because he is part of our team, just like our staff is part of our team, in taking care of our registrants and administering all the things that we deal with. But yet his contract only deals strictly with examination, and it doesn't deal with this situation of here, the interaction with the board. And I really think that if nothing else in the future, it should, but currently it does not, and I feel bad, and I want to apologize openly to Mr. Messier that he's had to foot his own bill to drive 6.5 hours up here and spend the night, and drive 6.5 hours back home, and put up with us. So and will not get one penny of reimbursement out of it. I wish that that our department could do something in his behalf for that, because I know Mr. Messier well enough to know that he's not going to ask for it, but I think that that's only appropriate.
As the contract, I believe this particular contract is coming to a close. I think as you prepare your considerations for your next RFP, that might be something that we could work to make sure is included as you contemplate generally what the ideas you're looking for in the contract that we would draft moving forward for whichever vendor would be selected. I think those are definitely points of consideration we can look at.
Thank you.
Very good. All right, good points there. All right, Dr. Messier, in terms of the examination itself, the state-specific examination, obviously there's been a little bit of different light shed on us as far as in the future, obviously how we're going to be administering the exam. You know, hopefully the opportunity is afforded to you, the opportunity to continue with it, should you so choose to do so. What can you tell us about the exam itself, the Tennessee State-specific exam itself, in terms of the health of the examination right now, in terms of the bank of questions that are available, and are they, of course, there's been some rule changes here within somewhat recently. Is the health of the exam up to date with those?
No, the contract requires that I maintain a database of questions, and it specifically says 100 questions. And the current database, what I've done here is kind of broken down the topics in that database, as well as the formats of the questions. And the topics that you have, we currently have 109 items in the bank, but if you notice at the bottom line down there, it says that this does not include those questions that we generated for the law and rules exam, which, you know, I'm not sure where that. Those are questions, if you're not going to use them for the law and rules exams, they could be, and those are good questions because those were vetted well, I think, by in the process we went through to create that. But so that does not include those, but if you want to include it, you could. But anyway, under the topics, those topics are basically, as the contract requires the database to have for questions. And so if you don't like that particular mix of questions or types, you know, that might be something to consider for future discussion or future contracts. But and if you notice the item there that's got the note to the right, you know, they got a category in the contract that says general customs, history, and definitions. Well, that's kind of evolved with, in reviewing this, I've been doing this for 21 years. You're about the fourth board I think I've worked with on this, maybe third, but questions, you know, as they've reviewed the exam, they've said, well, let's have a question on this, or let's change this question. And so things kind of have evolved. So I've also included some of the other topics there to the right of what's included in that database and what we use in the exam. So you can see the number of items of each category there. And then as far as the makeup, the format, 83 of those are multiple choice, and the rest are either fill-in, essay, description, writing, or preparing a graphic of some sort. So that's how it's broken down. Now, the quality of the questions over 21 years has improved. You know, and so there are some questions on there that probably ought to be updated, rewritten, eliminated, whatever. So, but there are some questions that are pretty current, you know, in terms of their pertaining to the current law. So the database needs some going forward, probably needs some improvement. I would say about 25% of those questions need to be updated.
Since I'm the senior board member at the moment, I've been on here 7 years now. This is something, Mr. McCormick, that has not happened in my tenure, and that's why that we feel so that this is so important, that we get a hold of this and wrap our arms around it and get it back pointed in the right direction.
I understand that.
Mr. McCormick and Peter also and the rest of the board, you know, we talk about the Sunshine Law and what have you, but here's a reason that instead of one person, this board being as small as it is, it almost seems like if it takes a legislative action to make an amendment to the Sunshine Law to allow an executive session where you meet in session with your vendor and somebody from legal to make sure we don't get out of bounds, but we can discuss as a group board we need to do that as a group. That doesn't need to be done one person at a time with a vendor, then the next person at a time with a vendor, then the next person. It just needs to be done. And I don't know what it takes, if it takes some kind of an amendment that we can present to the legislature to amend that. I don't know how we go about doing that.
Yeah, and I can kind of, I'll just speak sort of honestly to that assertion. I don't believe the Sunshine Law, and there's a number of lawyers here besides me that could answer this question. I don't believe the Sunshine Law in Tennessee has been amended since the 1970s. They're it's been, efforts to amend it have been generally unsuccessful, and so obviously if the association for land surveyors were interested, I'm sure you could propose such a thing, but I can tell you that I understand, like I said, as I stated earlier, I understand your plight and your concern, and there's things that honestly I think are problematic about the Sunshine Law. I don't think everybody thinks it's perfect, but at the same time, it is the law, and until it does change, which I think is probably what it would likely require a statute change for you to be able to do that. I would just to try to be honest with you, I think the odds of that are probably, I mean, more power to anybody who can achieve it. But as I said, it hasn't been done in a while. So.
Well, I understand that, but there again, you understand our plight and kind of where we're sitting with this entire scenario here, and it makes it difficult, very difficult for any board, I don't care whether it's a surveyor board or whatever board it is, to be able to come up with an exam that, that we don't compromise, because you're sitting in a session and they're televising this and what have you, and you can't go out and do all the things that need to be done, that would need to be done corporately. That's my opinion. So.
That's basically it, as far as the database, and question I have to present, but.
Well, let's talk about a couple other things. What do you, since this is now going to be basically just a 2-hour exam at some setting, I assume that the October exam is still going to be in Murfreesboro, probably where we've been giving it in the past. So it's going to be sort of a quick and dirty, I guess, trip for you in a way. Come in one day, get prepared, 2-hour exam, and then go home. Do you have any thoughts about increasing the exam frequency? Now, and some of these questions I'm going to ask may be opinionated, but I know you're a licensee as well, besides being an exam writer and proctor. But do you have any opinions about increasing the frequency? Because that was one of the thoughts that we had when we were going the other direction, to try to assist in accommodating the applicant. And I'll expand on that after you answer.
I think it's long overdue. I think it ought to be offered quarterly at least. That's 6 months is a long time to have a lot of careers, in a sense, because of it. Especially the folks that are coming from outer state and just taking the 2-hour state-specific exam. They want to move on, and I think every 3 months would be very appropriate to do that. Scheduling it, but you're going to have smaller numbers, obviously, probably with that, but that's will impact the cost, of course, if you're going to use a contractor.
Well, again, this is some of the things that we need to kind of wrap our arms around.
I would agree. I mean, I think the idea, this is a good opportunity, as I said, with this coming up, is a good opportunity for you all to really expect more in terms of, I mean, I think the idea of more frequent is, I would agree with Dr. Messier, is that I think it probably would be a more valuable resource to your licensees. And I know that's essentially, if we can get there and provide this in a setting that could allow for frequency. I mean, and in some cases, people are, as we know, and I don't know all the dynamics that going into your test, and I think would have to be determined and as you request the RFP. But I mean, for some of the vendors, if you're taking a test, you can just go log in on a date and take it. I mean, it's that, and I don't know what NCAAS is their part is going to be like, but I think there's definitely a value to making it more accessible in general.
Let me give you a little history for what it's worth. When this board started, and we started with an examination in 1969, the board wrote a 2-day, 16-hour examination, administered it, scored it, and so forth. In about 19, and Peter can correct me, I think it's 1978.
Oh, yeah.
78 or 79, they brought NCWS on board and began using NCWS's exam along with their exam, still being a 16-hour exam. Well, as time has went on, it gravitated to where it was a 8-hour FS exam, NCWS paper, then it was a 6-hour PS exam, NCWS paper, and a 2-hour Tennessee State Specific exam. Well, now what's happened to us, and this has all just been in Peter's last contract, is the FS exam has went CBT. So it's out, he doesn't even touch it now. Now, starting in October, the PS exam is going CBT, so now he doesn't touch it. So the only thing that he's touching basically is the TS exam. So here's the real world scenario that I want to pose to you today, just for thought purposes. If I'm a PS candidate and I'm approved to take the examination in October, okay, the window opens the first Monday in October. I get approved by this board, I do the NCWS, everything needs to be done, I'm ready to go take my test. I take it on October let's say the 5th, just to pick a date, okay? I find out the next week that I passed the PS examination. Okay, I'm now ready to take my TS exam. In the past, I took those 2 exams on the same day. So when I found out I was licensed, 30 days later, basically I was licensed. Well, what's happening to us now is I take it on October 5th. I now have to apply potentially, and then that's something we're going to have to discuss. Come back to the board to be able to get a time to take the TS exam, and in the scenario that we're currently in, that would not be until about April the 14th or something. So now I still have this 6 months gap. Now obviously we're talking about the first round of folks, but where we need to go with it is when a person passes the PS exam, that in effect this board has already pre-approved their application for the TS exam. So when they pass it, they then can schedule with staff, Cody, to take the next available TS exam. So for example, if we did it quarterly, and let's say we gave the exam in January, okay, with the vendor, of course that would be a difference in Mr. Mezier's contract if it was this January, then I could pass in October, I could take my TS in January, and by the latest, by the 1st of February, plus or minus, depending on the days and so forth, I would be able to be licensed. So, what I'm looking at is how do we accommodate the applicant or examinee in a manner that is timely, because we have now taken away the ability of them to take both tests on the same day and be licensed shortly thereafter. We've now added more time in there that was unintentional.
Is there any reason they have to take the PS first? Couldn't they take the TS if the timing was better?
If we approve their application and that's our mindset, I think that could work. Yes, that could work, because we've actually had people take both of them at the same time, pass the TS, and then have to come back for a second or third try for the PS. So we've had that scenario also. So we have some scenarios here that I'm trying to wrap my arms around to help staff be able to keep these folks flowing.
I've done this once already. I've got Kimberly Whaley is here. She's the director of licensure, as I've already introduced you. She's pretty aware of all the testing for all of our programs and kind of how it implements. And so I'd love to have her join in this conversation if you're all okay with that.
Absolutely, yeah. Please step forward.
Anybody's got answers, we won't talk to them.
All the
I mean, I think the challenges that you have expressed, Mr. Lingerfeld, are things that we've also taken a look at, because I think our interest is to make this experience. And I was here last time talking to you about how I want to streamline this even more for potential candidates. And so we've we've been kind of exploring these conversations in a way to really get at that. So I didn't know if you had any. Did you have any comments to start, Kimberly?
I would agree. I believe if you approve to test, you're approving to test across the board. Having to return to the board to test, yes, that absolutely will delay your licenses. A licensee or applicants being able to become licensed and become professionals, and that is what we're here to do, is get these people in, make sure that they are qualified, and get them into the field working and contributing to our economy. So
That's consistent. I mean, I think our goals are pretty in line with yours in terms of sort of the process, and I've been sort of one of the things I think as you move into the next process. I mean, I don't know all the so I don't know exactly what it requires to take your state specific test. Is that something that can be done basically computer based as well? Is that possible, or does it? Because if that's one of the options. If it is, then I would we know the vendor who and we know that Pearson VUE, I believe, does the testing for NCSS. Well, I mean, obviously, they're contracted with. My understanding is that they're contracted with NCSS to be their vendor. Well, that there could be an opportunity to see if you could, they could be a potential bidder as well as an option where that may be so critical to you, where you could say that's a way of incorporating. I mean, they could potentially bid out to you specifically. I haven't spoken to them. Those are just things that you could consider.
But at NCSS, I'm involved with the exam process very heavily at NCSS. That's one of the current footballs that we have, is that the jurisdictional exams, because every jurisdiction has their own and they like to cling to their own and so forth, about the possibility of taking those to CBT. What's been problematic is the low numbers because of creating the test, doing the psychometrics on the test, then administering the test, and the key there is seat time. That's what your vendor like Pearson VUE or whoever is going to look at. Is going to be seat time, because that's what they're going to have to charge for the exam. So with the low numbers, that fee gets very large. And I'm not saying that's not a possibility. I'm just saying that we have been looking at it now for about 3 years, because we started looking at it when we started the CBT process with the FS.
Why is NCAA so? And this is just for my benefit from your all's perspective. Why is NCAA getting out of? I mean, is it just they're going electronic, that way they're not involved? I mean, is there not a reason why they couldn't include, if you're, I guess I'm a little, I don't know why that this couldn't be a part of the same process with NCAA and the state standards that you all provide, and they administer. I guess if they administered the exam in the same way they're administering the other exam, I guess that was a question.
Again, it's the numbers. It's the number situation. For example, Tennessee may have, we license about 20 some a year, basically, which means we test probably double that. So the numbers are very low. And see, NCSS looks at the numbers because they're giving a national examination. The FS, PS, FE, all of those are national examinations, so they have much greater numbers.
And they're not interested in, and it sounds like they're not interested in incorporating a break off of testing that you all provided for them to administer in the same setting.
I know, for example, I can give you this example. The state of Michigan and the state of Utah use the same vendor to do CBT examinations for them. The reason they do that is because of the cost. So there are jurisdictions that are doing CBT examinations.
That was one of the considerations. I think I was going to suggest, if you look at, it seems like from a ease of administration, there's the potential CBT would probably be, and that's that term, adopting that term. I wasn't familiar with it before this, but the computer-based CBT, computer-based testing, the thought that I think there's some advantages of registration and immediacy that could happen with those testing outlets that could be an option for you to consider.
Well, see, I'm from the school that says in the engineering world they take 2 exams, FE, PE. Well, when you take the PE examination, you're not tested on the laws and rules of the state of Tennessee. You're tested on the knowledge that it takes to pass the PE examination, okay? But your ethics require you to be able to meet those standards, okay? Well, as surveyors, are on the other side of that spectrum, because every jurisdictional board wants to test their surveyors on the laws of Tennessee and any quirky boundary issues, etc. And that holds true for whatever jurisdiction that you're involved in. Well, I feel like that with the advancement of the FS and the PS, that if there was a module added to the PS examination, for example, in the area we're in what's known as the colonial states, whereas if you go west, you're in the PLLS states. So if there were modules added to the PS exam, and this is what I argue on the EPS committee all the time, then basically the surveyor could be the same professional as the engineer and be responsible for their own in-state statutes and rules of wherever they're working at. And then basically what you end up with is primarily the threshold for a national examination, like the PE examination. Now that's where I'd like to see it. That's Tim Lingerfeld talking. That's where I'd like to see us go, because I think it makes merit and it eliminates this situation and problem that we're discussing today. But that's not where we're at. So I did want to follow up one thing with you, Mr. McCormick, quite hit my mind. You had asked, I think in our last meeting, about the possibility of NCEES pre-approval for FS candidates. You know, NCEES allows a state to okay them to take applicants from that state without the applicant ever having applied to the state, okay? What's cumbersome with that, with our current licensing law, is we have 5 different paths to get there, to be able to take the FS examination. One of the paths requires 10 years post-high school education to get there. First off, the FS exam is designed around a BS degree to start with. So the likelihood of a person passing it immediately graduating high school might not be very strong if we allowed them just to go take it. Well, then they couldn't even apply to this board for 10 years before we could actually officially grant them a PSLIT certification. So, the merit of that, I kind of struggle with a little bit. I mean, I know where you were coming from, and if we were straight BS degree the way we were before we had to change our licensing law, then it would have been a no-brainer.
I guess to counter to that point, I would state that really, one, I don't know what the percentages of the folks who do each path are, but in looking at it, I mean, if they're objective in nature, regardless of whether or not, I mean, they can pass the test. I mean, if I've been in, I guess, if I took it right out of, I guess I need 10 years experience, I take it. Whenever I take the test, whether or not they pass or don't pass is really kind of on that we can be clear about the expectations, and the testing vendor can communicate, here's the requirements. That's what we do in other areas, and the board can say expectations are still very clear. We're not changing the expectations. All we're doing is saying that by the time you have come to the board, that you are prepared with a complete application. That's essentially what we're, and with the testing piece, I mean, it's bringing it where we don't have people, earlier in the process. It just kind of says I can come with my test complete, and that part of it's done. So on day, if I've got the high school path as I understand it, and I admittedly, as you all know, I oversee a lot of programs, so my depth of knowledge is not as deep as your all, so I'm learning. But if I get there if I'm at a year 9 and I want to take the test, the best way to get licensed would be, or the quickest way, as I understand it, would be to have the test have already completed, and as soon as I come to the board on the first day of day 10, I say, here I am, I'm ready, I can practice. That's the most efficient, that's the fastest path. If you are having to approve them once they have that 10-year experience, then they have to go and take the test after the fact. And I guess that was my inclination is, one, if it's an objective standard, which my understanding is that these are objective standards, then the testing vendor would be able to check the boxes as they do for any experience requirement. And I think and I can tell you, as I said before, we've got an array of. I've had the same conversation as you can imagine with the we've talked about engineers and landscape architects. I'm having the same conversation with them and the same kind of ideas. So, I look at it and think that. Because it's being done pretty consistently across the country, and honestly, it doesn't really matter what profession that we have. That's just kind of been the trend. So I don't know. I guess I see it as being I don't think whether or not they want to apply before they have the experience for the test. I mean, we can make that very clear. I don't know that there's going to be a bunch of people taking it 1 year out of high school and thinking once they take the test that they're going to be it. And if they fail, obviously we would say to them, there's a reason for you to be preparing and developing and studying for these. Kind of rambled a little bit.
Well, the only fallacy in what you described, and I'm sure it's just unfamiliarity, is that when this board grants an individual a PSLIT certificate, that's the moment that it triggers their next 2-year window of experience to be able to qualify to take the PSTS examination. So, I can go either way as far as that FS situation. I don't know what the rest of the board feels, but it seems in my mind sort of futile to take the test and sort of struggle with it, or even have it in your pocket while you're waiting on all that time to get done. But like I say, I can go either way. I don't have any issue with that.
The reason I personally am so much for it is I've seen it work in so many places, and we don't have that's one of the questions often when we have this conversation. A lot of people will say, like, they're really worried about the people who might take the test and fail. We just haven't had it, to my knowledge. We haven't had a series of people complaining about the things that you've kind of laid out. So
If I'm going to give my 2 cents on it, I personally think it's a smart way to go, and it favors the applicant, which is what I'm all about. I want to get them applied, tested, and approved, and moving on with their careers as quickly as possible. What I don't like to see is basically paperwork, government getting in the way of slowing down their progress. And essentially that does happen the way it's structured right now is, of course, we're waiting for them to accomplish the criteria beforehand to be qualified to take the exam. And then there's the application process, and then there's wait for us to approve the application, and then there's take the exam, and then wait for the results. Now, fortunately, that part has shortened up. Waiting for the results has shortened. But at the end of the day, the applicant has to apply, be qualified, and pass the exam. That's at the end of the day. And all 3 of those facets are accomplished, whether the exam is taken prior to the experience being gained or after. Those 3 facets are still being accomplished. And it just seems to me that it appears apparent that many other states are going this way with examination at any time prior to experience gained. And then with successful approval of the application and having taken the exam already, that they are approved for that license. I think it's going to go that way with many states, and I just think it's more efficient and beneficial for the applicant. So although I see you're wavering on either way with it, with your decision, I think it's a positive way to go. And quite frankly, I'd like to see it with the FS exam be done here. Galen, you have any thoughts?
I have to agree with you, I think, on that one, Jay. I just think that the more we keep government out of the things, the less red tape there is that's involved, and get it on through. Let the applicant go ahead and make the examination, get the exams out of the way, and whatever time that we can let them get their experience, fine, and just move on with the process. The quicker it is for them, the better they like it, the better we like it.
But we as a board, if we go that direction, and I'm not opposed, if we go that direction, we need to make sure that we get that information out. Hey, you, John and Jane Q. Public, are able to take the FS exam anytime that you have a high school diploma. From that point on, you can take the FS examination. But you will still have to apply and meet the requirements of the statute before you can advance further in your path of licensure.
And I think we may need to do a little bit of
that's fairly
study
said.
into the existing rules that we have in place as to whether there is anything in there. We'll have to review it, obviously, but see if there's anything about the structure of what we're speaking about right now, if we can put that in place or not.
Okay with the board. I mean, I think that would be my suggestion would be that it sounds like there's some favorability to that idea that we could have Laura could look at the rules, see where we are, see what the implications are, and kind of come back to you with some thoughts about how it could impact and really maybe how we could implement that process moving forward.
I'd like to hear from Laura on that. It'd be a good topic for next week. Peter, I'd like to kind of get your 2 cents on this. You're kind of standing off to the side listening to the banter back and forth. I know you've probably seen and read and seen some similar ideas in other states. What's your thoughts on it?
I'm concerned about giving the the PS exam, which is the Principles and Practice exam, which is supposed to be based on your experience. You know, the FS, Fundamentals of Surveying, is supposed to be academic-based, and it's supposed to be testing on your education. The PS exam is originally was designed to test you on your experience. If you gain that practical experience, you know how to apply the stuff in the field and that sort of thing. And allowing them to take the PS before that experience.
I think we're only talking about the FS, is that correct?
We're currently only discussing
Okay.
that.
Yeah.
I'm
so
sorry.
I would not agree with, I'd be on your side about the
Okay.
PS. You don't want to take it prior to.
Well, I know that, well, it's not too far off because that's what NCEES is looking at with their PE exams. That's not us, but so, but anyway, I don't know how a high school graduate could ever pass the FS exam. I mean, I don't understand why we even are talking about that. I know there was a situation and that's how that statute got changed, but it's a disservice to them to let them take that exam.
Well, you know, I think that's up to the applicant's choice. You know, if whether the day he graduates high school he wants to go take it, who knows that he hasn't for the last 4, 5, 6 years worked with his dad out in the field during the summers and things like that, and has gained some experience and knowledge that way. But rather, that's just the day that the window opens. You know, obviously there'd be a 10-year gap of opportunity in there. Obviously, you know, the date of graduation being the earliest date, obviously, but it's the opportunity for the applicant is what that is.
They're willing to take, you know, if they're willing to go through that pain, I guess that's up to them, but
Certainly.
that's the only negative I see about it. I mean, as far as if they want to take it first, that's fine. I mean, I don't think it hurts the process. I think the public's being protected either way.
The other thing I wonder, just out loud, is what happens if little Johnny graduates high school, takes the FS exam, and let's say he passes it, and 3 years from that point in time, the window that he passed it under no longer exists. What happens then? I mean, I know we can't what if everything, I understand that, but in other words, to give you a good example, I am a very vehement opponent, proponent, I guess I should say, of our licensing law returning to it being BS only. No AS and no high school. And I would like to see that happen. So what I'm saying is if that happened, to get back to where we were, then that window of opportunity for that particular applicant actually closed because it no longer exists, and he would have to fall into one of the other criteria.
I think maybe I'm missing something. What do you mean when you say his window would have closed?
Okay, today, I can graduate high school and have 10 years experience and take the FS examination. Okay? Tomorrow, because we're going to let anybody take the FS examination, I graduate high school, I take the FS and I pass it. 3 years from now, the statute that I was working towards to get my license no longer exists. It goes back to the BS degree.
No,
We'd have to
I
cover
think the best thing that we can do is encourage our vendors to lay out all the information in a clear way to potential applicants. Because, you know, we can encourage and say that we're in favor of grandfathering clauses to help people not fall into that situation, but that's really the legislative authority. The best thing that we can do is make sure that the vendors that we choose and that on our website we're laying out all of these potential places that somebody can fall into. I think that's the best that we can do at the moment.
And in terms of your hypothetical, I think I guess the legislature could make all kinds of changes that would impact processes. I'm really only trying to drive based on I'm trying to drive our business operations based on how things currently are, and that's really probably all I can speak to in terms of that.
If I just want one last point here on this proposal, Jimmy, I know you can't speak for TAPS, But with your experience in TAPS, has there been any discussion, or could you raise some discussion with TAPS about this proposed idea on the FS exam? And just in your personal opinion, what do you think TAPS may have an opinion on this?
I can't speak on behalf of TAPS right now, but I can definitely put this on the agenda to discuss at our September board of directors meeting, and share. You know, I've been in the room for this conversation and a few previous discussions. Could definitely bring that up at our meeting in September, and then report back, either myself or whoever attends that October meeting. Come back with some thoughts on that.
And I mean, we'd be glad to. I mean, I would be glad to come speak, or someone from our staff to come speak and talk about the merits of this, as well as why we see it, if that's helpful in framing the conversation. I mean, I think I'd be glad to discuss it if it's helpful for your all's association.
Appreciate that.
I just want to see more positives for the applicant than negatives.
Pressing enough that we're
I think you
proponents
do
of
too,
the
yeah.
applicant and getting the applicant tested and approved and out there working and providing for our economy. Peter, is anything further on the state-specific exam that you wanted to cover specifically, or?
I was told to show up, so, and answer any questions you might have. I don't have an agenda.
Okay.
Do you feel that the current format that we have for the exam is adequate and been, obviously it's been successful? I mean, because, as you said earlier, you have improved the exam as time has went on and so forth. Are we being remiss in not looking at maybe a little different format or something of that nature?
That's totally up to you, that's up to you how you want, the way that, for the benefit of the others, the way the exam is formatted, they have a series of multiple choice questions that are just ask questions about rules and things that are conducive to multiple choice questions. Then there's some fill in the blanks, essay type questions, like they have to scope of work in a contract, let's say. And then there's a description. The two, probably the key products that we put out as a profession is the land boundary description and plat. And there are two questions devoted to those things. One is either writing or critiquing a land boundary description, and the other question is preparing a plat. So it's very hands-on, not conducive to computer testing, and that's the format we've gone with for almost 21 years now, and that's how the prior boards kind of wanted to do it. But if you go to all multiple choice, which tends to be the trend now, you lose that, can they prepare a plat, the basics of a plat? Can they write a description or critique a description? I mean, that's up to you. Are we protecting the public by are we hurting the public by taking that away and just making everything multiple choice? That's a philosophical question, obviously, but I think the board I personally think the format we have now is a good format, but it is cumbersome compared to computer-based testing. So sees if they can produce the basic products of our profession, plus it tests them on the basic rules they should be obeying. And so it's not me, that's how the prior boards have kind of evolved that exam, from day one.
One of the other concerns that the staff had prior to director was relative to out-of-state candidates applying and wanting to be able to take the exam. But I feel like that we've kind of addressed that. If we open the window to 4 times a year, makes it pretty convenient for them to do that, which will mean we'll have patients at each and every meeting, which is fine. That's not a problem. I would like to go back to the RFP, if my acronym correct. You've been working with mine. I'm working with yours
Thank
now. If I got that right. When we did the contract that Mr. Messier is currently under, we started about a year before, because we had to do some, I guess, vetting or whatever structure of the contract, and then it had to go to legal, and then they took it to somebody else that did contracts, and they brought it back and asked if they could do this or do that. So I'm concerned about our time window, because, you know, his ends March the 30th, 2017, and we need to have something in place before his ends, I think.
So naturally, I share the same concerns and am interested in the timelessness process, and it does take some time. And so we have been looking at this, and Kimberly has been kind of actively researching the RFP process and the length of time. And I think we feel like if we're able to make a decision at the next meeting regards to RFP, you should be able to do this in a timely manner. So I think probably at our, is that fair? So at our next meeting, I think we need to make some decisions about what you would want to include in the RFP, and we can be thinking about my thought is we would, based on the feedback you had, and if you all have individually to me and to Laura, I think we could discuss that further to kind of decide what exactly you would want to lay out specifically in your request for the future.
Think we can anticipate a first draft of it at the next meeting?
I think
somewhat of a template perhaps, or?
I think I've been taking some notes based on your discussion and desires of the board, and I believe so. These RFPs a lot of times include a lot of canned language because they are standard contracts. So I think with the exception of that, we can absolutely have all the boilerplate in and just making adjustments to your specific needs. That's absolutely possible.
My biggest concerns is the fact that when this would take effect April 1st, is that we're in a transition. Effectively, the quote new vendor, whomever that may be, would have an exam run on top of them. That's why I was hopeful that in somehow or another with the PS going CBT, that there would be a method under the existing contract. Now I'm speaking for Mr. Mezzi, and I don't mean to, but a method under the existing contract that we could have an administration of a state exam sometime potentially maybe in January, so that we could kind of accommodate these next applicants and begin to cut down that window of 6 months.
I believe as the contract is currently written, that would require a contract amendment, given it is not part of, it specifically mentions April and October in the contract, as is today.
And that's why I'm asking.
We'd
because
have
And I think you could potentially, I think you could, and like I said, I think you could potentially make an adjustment. You'd just be making an adjustment for the life of the contract, and so it would be a pretty short-lived adjustment. I mean,
sort of a
obviously,
one-time deal.
it would,
you know,
it potentially would be.
but
It would
again,
just be
in
an amendment
combination-
to the existing contract that would expire. I don't believe your existing contract, given the length of time that has been in place, can be extended beyond March 30th.
Wasn't asking that.
Okay.
Was
I
not
just
a-
wanted to make
was
sure.
not asking that question, no ma'am.
Okay.
I mean, what I was saying was if there's a way that we could administer prior to that contract, an administration that's outside the April-October window, that's what my question was.
It should be fine.
Because that way, what I'm thinking about
But
is
we
that
can't
way,
extend it at all since, like as Kimberly, you don't care about extending. Either way, we have to, because it's a government contract, once we get past that March 1st date, we have to make sure the new contract complies with the proper way to obtain a contract.
And
well,
all of the contracts, the existing ones with testing vendors, usually there's language in the RFP requesting how they plan to meet the needs of the board and the specific timelines we lay out in those, so that it would include information about the transition and the startup of administering the new exam. And given your changes, they would have to work to accommodate those and prove to us that they could accommodate.
what I was hopeful for was when the candidates we approve after lunch are able to take the PSCBT in October, that when Cody is asked the question of when can I now take my TS examination, he would be able to say, you know, we will give an exam on January the 20th, let's pick a date. You know, he would be able to tell them that, because those folks are not gonna have to come back to us, because we've already approved them to take that exam as we discussed earlier. And then that way, he would be able to give them, in other words, if you pass the PS by this date, you'd be able to take the TS here. If this is working, you see what I'm getting at?
Probably not going to be able to have a contract amendment after lunch.
No, I didn't say that.
Well, and
but-
we won't be able to we wouldn't be able to give them a date because we would have to have an agreed upon amendment in order to present that date to them. I do have one question regarding the approval for the PS and the TS. The candidates you approve today will only be allowed to take the PS in October. You wouldn't be approving them to also take the TS in October?
That's a question. That's a very good question, because, see, the PS will be at a Pearson View site wherever they're at within the state of Tennessee, or even outside the state of Tennessee. Okay, so in other words, if I lived in Memphis, I could take the PS, once I'm approved, at a Pearson View site at University of Memphis, if they had one, okay? But the TS would still be in Murfreesboro, so I think you're right in where you're coming from. We were gonna discuss that later, but, they would be able to take the TS in Murfreesboro, whether or not they would have taken the PS. Would you agree with that, Peter? Because they're approved to take the exam. So, you know, they could still take the TS in October at the scheduled time, at the scheduled place, and the PS would be taken whenever, and then if they did end up passing both of them, then they would become licensed.
If my memory of the contract is correct, the TS exam is given after the PS window closes, so there would not be a conflict between the windows. Is that correct? That somebody wouldn't be trying to take the PS on the same day that we are going to administer the TS.
No, the NCAAS does not close dates, because.
They no longer close. They no
No.
longer have their April,
No.
October window. So it would
No.
be at the candidate's discretion if they can make both. Do most people prepare for the TS, and forgive we have so many different exams. Do they also, are they preparing as they go? If they're preparing for the PS, are they preparing to take the TS as well? Or is that a
Well,
simultaneous?
when they were doing them on the same day, yes.
Okay.
But they're two different, they're two different creatures, basically.
Oh, absolutely. I was just saying if this scenario is viable, that the person who's preparing for that you approved today, that's preparing for the PS in October, would also be prepared if you approved them to go ahead and take the TS in October. That
But the likelihood of them-
there wouldn't be some crippling of
The
candidates.
likelihood of them being able to take it on the same day probably would not be very strong, and I would highly discourage it because of the amount of seat time that's necessary for the window for the PS examination.
Well, and basically, we have one date that's available that the TS is giving currently. So it would be up to the candidates that you approved today, if they wanted, it would be an option that could be made available to them so that they would not have to wait until March and could be licensed November, early December. So you'd be actually moving them ahead 3 to 4 months in the process if you went ahead and approved them to
Well,
sit for both.
actually, usually the results are not back into us, I think, till the third week of December from the TS exam. Is that correct?
Contract says 45 days.
Okay.
But still, that would still be 3 months, 4 months potentially that you could save these people and allow them to go to work.
Right. Absolutely. Right. And that's what we want to do.
All right, lots of discussion. Peter, was there anything else you wanted to cover real quick? Jimmy, you mentioned something?
Yes, I just sent our executive secretary an email asking her to put this FS discussion on our September agenda, and also wanted to share the date of our September board meeting and extend an invitation to someone from the board staff. That meeting date will be September the 24th, 2016, at the Inn at Opryland here in Nashville, and those meetings generally start about 9 o'clock.
I'm gonna get someone better than me because that's my wedding day. So I will.
Congratulations.
Sorry, as much as I'd love to
She won't
come,
mind.
and I was
She won't
looking,
mind.
as much
It's
as
a
I
great
was looking
place to
forward to
be.
come, I think I'll have to pass on that. But we'll definitely have somebody. Thank you.
your
And
bride is not.
you said it's at the Opryland.
Yes, the Inn at Opryland, it's the old Radisson, I believe.
Right across the street.
I'll give you my card. And
I've got one too.
email.
Peter, one other question that comes to mind. Do you see any merit in making the TS exam closed book versus open book as we've had it?
make it easier for the, it'll make it easier for the administration of the exam, obviously. We don't have to worry about the reference materials. It will be harder for the candidates, just because they won't have access to find the materials, and we're going to have to adjust the questions somewhat too. Point that's in such and such a section, you know, we ask more general questions, but if I had a choice, knowing what I know, I would rather go open book. Just
The only reason I asked that, it was on my list of things that we were going to discuss, had the staff been willing to take the exam on, but because of security issues and variety of things that would have been potentially problematic for them, but we didn't go there, so that's fine. But I just was curious about your opinion.
my standpoint, it'd be much nicer to be closed book, but for the candidate standpoint, it's a whole different scenario than the PS, as you
Right.
know. It's a different breed of cat.
All right, certainly great information, Peter. We certainly appreciate you attending this afternoon for us,
Having
and
me.
a wealth of information, and certainly we got a long way to go still, a lot of work to do to get the TS exam administered and underway. All right, just by the clock here, it looks like we're coming up on lunchtime, and certainly want to take a break for that. What I suggest is that we convene back here about 1 o'clock, right in that area, and we'll probably start off with the legal report when we get back from lunch, all right? Okay. Everybody's getting ready over there? Yep. Okay. All right. Hope everyone enjoyed the lunch break this afternoon, and with that being completed, we're going to jump right back into our business at hand. Picking up on the agenda, a couple of things we'd like to cover here. Step number one, we're going to go over the rulemaking revisions. We had 2 items in the information that was provided to us, and I'm going to refer to Ms. Martin to kind of get us up to speed here and what it is we're trying to accomplish.
So we'll talk about the military rules first. I know that you guys had already looked at that language. Since I've mailed it to you, I've made a few formatting edits just because I've been routing it through the department, so we're ready to go as soon as possible, but nothing substantive about the rule has changed. So I did bring copies if you wanted to look at it, but otherwise this is exactly the same language I know you've seen before. The real difference, though, is that when this was presented to you before, it was for a rulemaking hearing. But at this point, so many boards have passed this exact type of rule, and we've had no issues whatsoever. So I really think these are a better candidate for proposed rules. It's a faster process, so we'll get in compliance quicker. And also, I just don't think that there's anything controversial that anybody would care about. The thing about proposed rules is they're posted, and if 10 people from the public make comment, then that triggers a rulemaking hearing. So it's not, we haven't taken that from the public unless there's obviously interest in it. So what I need today is for you to approve the proposed rulemaking hearing, so this new process, and then also in the document was the economic impact statement and the regulatory flex analysis. And those are questions required by the Secretary of State and the Joint Ops, is it Joint Ops Committee? And the legislature. And those are, we can go over them if you guys have any questions, however you want to do it.
Okay, I think the specific rule that we're talking about, which is listed as a new rule for the military members and spouses, I don't think we have any issues with that, any challenges to that. I think everything's pretty much straightforward.
Okay.
But included in the same packet, so to speak, of this proposed rule filing is some other changes associated with some other existing rules excluding the military. In other words, pages, 1 through 4 here, 1 through 5, I guess it is. And Tim, I think you said you had some questions on that, is that right?
Sure.
Sorry.
No, it's okay.
No, you've done a wonderful job. I want to compliment you on that. But I noted some other revisions that needed to be made to the language in some of the other sections.
Okay.
And I just didn't feel like that this one was quite ready to be pushed through unless we looked at some of those potential revisions.
Okay, in that case, then I am going to pass these out because I have sent these, so the Attorney General has to approve these rules for constitutional review. Plus, It seems like everyone in the department has to review them and sign off on them, so I've made a few revisions to them, so I just want to make sure we're all on the same page.
That'd be a
But
good
since they
idea.
were mostly format, I didn't want to bother you with it unless we were gonna go over it. Staple. Where were you thinking there was an issue?
Okay, well, start on page 2. I have several. In .02 under applications in paragraph 1, it appears that it's been added because mine is underlined. It says each with a written survey report. That is not what this board requires for the application. We require a written legal description. A survey report and a legal description are two specifically different documents.
About a legal description?
Description, yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Continuing the same paragraph, I'm no English major. I have trouble with East Tennessee English. I thought standards of practice should be capitalized, the S&P, but that's not a big deal. However, in that sentence, it says must bear the seal of the supervising registered land surveyor. That should also say seal and signature.
Yep.
Again, that's part of our rules of conduct. Okay, under examinations, this is where we were going earlier with this, so I'm wondering if we don't need to tweak it a little bit. My suggestion is that basically I still concur that the examination consists of two parts, being the NCWS part, which is two sections within it, and then the Tennessee specific, which is prepared by this board. However, I think that in the third sentence, it says the minimum passing grade on the part prepared by NCWS shall be established by NCWS. I wonder out loud if the word part could be one of two things, either the word parts, plural, or examinations administered by. In other words, saying the minimum passing grade on the examinations administered by the NCWS shall be established by NCWS, which that's actually what happens.
Okay. I think I'm not really following you because
So the word part?
the
is that issue?
minimum passing grade on the state part shall be 70%.
Right.
Do you want me to get rid of part and say this and just say the name of the test?
Yes. State exam, yes.
Okay. And then are you still comfortable with getting rid of the on each of the two subparts thereof? Because I don't think that makes sense anymore.
I really don't, I don't think that's really necessary for where we're at.
So you don't want to get rid of that?
Yeah, I do.
do
I
want
do.
to-
Okay.
Yes, yes, yes.
Okay.
So it would say the minimum passing grade on the state examination shall be 70%. The minimum passing grade on the examinations administered by NCWS shall be established by NCWS. Because there's two separate examinations, the FS and the PS.
Right. I think that paragraph makes more sense with just state exam and still getting rid of the part that's crossed out. And then I think that this is clear.
I apologize because I did not look at your latest one that you just gave me. I was looking at the one that I had
Oh, okay.
before. I apologize.
I didn't know how many times you guys had reviewed these rules, which is why I'm trying to streamline this as much as
Have not
possible.
reviewed, let me get that word out,
Okay.
reviewed this rule.
That's fine.
That's why I was a little taken back when it was, all these others were part of the military, because before we had focused on simply just adding the military language to this rule, not modifying the rule. That was why I was confused.
Yeah, it was just the military.
So, and I think I've expressed this with, I think some of you individually, but one of the things that transpired, and I think it's reflective in here, is there was some of this work has, in a transition, probably previously wasn't correctly handled, and so I think we've been working from some information that we have. So if Laura's gotten information kind of through that process, so if there are any things that's probably where the confusion stems from.
We're certainly not critical.
No, and
of this by any
I think
means.
we were. I just think we wanted to make sure.
I just felt like if we needed to, if we were going to make this effort, if there's some areas we
agree.
could tweak, let's tweak it and move on.
100%.
And then that way we put this in the bed and we work on something else.
We agree.
Did you have additional edits?
Yes, ma'am. Let me go to the next page. I wanted to comment, I like what you did in paragraph 1 of syllabus for examinations by adding but not limited to, because that opens a window for us to do some other things that are not in here without having to reinvent the wheel and add 2 more paragraphs or whatever. So I really like that. I wanted to compliment you on that. Okay, I'm concerned now on section 05 about fees. And I think we should discuss that just a little bit briefly, because basically what you did was you deleted the fee for the fundamentals examination, okay, which is correct. I agree with that, okay? However, I think it's pertinent to understand that deleting that fee actually saved the applicant or examinee some money, because the FS fee for CBT is $225 that they have to pay each time they take it with NCWS. So in the spirit of that, the PS exam, or principal and practice as it's listed, is $150. So what this reads to me is we're asking the applicant to pay $150 to us, and then at the exam site for the PS exam CBT, they're being asked to pay $300 to take the exam. Well, the $150 was basically covering purchasing the exam and NCWS scoring the exam. So I think we still need some type of fee, but I don't think that fee needs to be $150 because of that
As
reason.
soon as we change this fee, this can probably no longer be proposed rules. So if we want to talk about fee changing, then that's kind of a different project. I thought we were just deleting this fee because it
Well, see,
doesn't exist for us
this
anymore.
is one of only 3 fees that we're allowed to even discuss by statute. I need to point that out because I think that, in my mind, the people that we approve in a few minutes in these applications, it's unfair to them to pay $150 to us, in effect, for nothing. I mean, I don't mean no disrespect, but that's just my analysis, and then pay $300 to take the test. They should
You
pay
want to
something.
lower the fee.
Yes, and I didn't figure that it would be problematic if we went the other direction, because, we've been told time and time again that the folks up on the Hill don't want any new fees. I'm not trying to create a new fee, I'm trying to decrease a fee.
What do you think would be appropriate? Do you guys have any ideas about that?
Based on, I'm just throwing a number out, based on the FS, I would say $50.
I don't think that anyone is opposed to lowering fees ever, but I would caution that we make sure that our numbers can still. I hate to change fees without a lot of research ahead of time.
See, that's the thing I brought up to Mr. McCormick in a prior meeting, was that our budget numbers that we currently see that he talked about earlier today are going to be significantly different next year, because all the FS will be out, all the PS will be out. Those, we won't be basically trading money from the applicant to NCWS and getting a small amount in between.
think it's a good question in terms of, and I think that I actually really appreciate the spirit that you're looking at in terms of the fee. We haven't really, I think my thought would be I would love to kind of take a moment to explore the sort of the dynamics and the impact to your all's financials before we did that, but I think it's a really, really worthwhile consideration. I think it's probably something we should definitely take a look at, particularly with all the questions that are surrounding the changes to the testing process.
And it certainly doesn't have to be done right now. I'm just making that discussion.
Well, my next suggestion is I can always break out the fees and make them their own separate rulemaking hearing, because I really would like to push through the military applicant rules, because, we're out of compliance right now. But with fee changes, there's just extra steps, extra protections to the board's budget, and that's not even really a legal function. There's just so many accounting processes that need to happen, but so that might take longer, but it doesn't mean that we can't do it. I just would suggest that if you do want to go down that path, that I take the fees out of this and put them in a separate
I think that'd be a
rulemaking
great idea.
project.
That's fine
That's a
with me.
reasonable thing to do.
And we can still keep the spirit of this
Yeah.
through the rule-making process.
Yeah, because
and
like I
get it
say,
through.
we thought we were just dealing with the military, and then all this other stuff popped up.
Yep.
Right.
Yes, if we can remove that one out.
Well, it's basically
We can
all
look
fee
at the
related.
fees again separately.
Really. I'd like-
I think what you requested sounds like that's what we can do. We can go ahead and pull the fee part out and keep the most imperative thing here is I think we're all on the same page as the military. So we'll take the fee out and we'll start digging into the fee and have some information for you all at the next meeting to have some more discussions on that.
Okay, so the remainder of the body of this proposal remains the same. We'll just remove any part of the fee changes there.
Yeah.
That'd be great.
Yeah, and I think we have a good rule now.
What I will do, so what we're gonna do is when we vote on this in a minute, is we're gonna vote on it as amended with the amendments that we just made, plus the deletion of the fees from this rules. And then what I'll do is by the October meeting, I can come with like the first draft of a new rulemaking project for just the fees. And then that way we can look at, since we're gonna open up that section anyway, that way we can take the time to make sure that we're taking all the appropriate steps.
Okay, are we gonna vote on these separately or together? Does it matter?
I would prefer you vote on them separately
I think
since
separately would be
they're,
better. All right. Okay, so with that, with the amendments and deletion as discussed, I would open the floor to a motion for adoption of those statements.
So moved.
And a second?
I'll second.
All right, any other further discussion on that? All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed say nay. All right, so that'll pass as amended and deleted.
Thank you, Ms. Martin.
Okay, the other one we have here is on the GPS rules. All right, I trust that y'all have had an opportunity to review these. Was there any further discussion? Was there any other changes, Ms.
no,
Martin,
the
on these?
GPS rules are the same as what I
Straight up?
sent you.
I do recall this has gone through this board on more than one occasion with several edits. All right, is there any other discussion? Okay.
I make a motion that the proposed rule be approved.
All right.
Second it.
All right, motion second, last chance for discussion. All right, with a positive voice vote, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. All right, so we have two rules that have passed, one was amended and a section deleted. Does that cover that for you, Ms. Martin?
And I
Great.
just want to make clear that when you adopted the rules, you were including the statements that were in that same rule packet in your vote? Okay, so that's included. Okay, so we are done with rules.
All right.
Great.
Time for the legal report. And Ms. Martin, I think you passed out a revised copy to the legal report earlier in the morning.
Yes, do you guys have that?
I believe those had two additional items on there, is
Yeah,
that right?
so it would be case 6 and 7.
Great, okay.
Oh, here's my copy. So I have not gone through a legal report with this board, but boards have different styles of how they like to review cases. So We can either just discuss the cases that you have questions on. I can read them into the record, any way that you want to do it.
Generally, I prefer that we go ahead and read them into the record. That was just my preference, and I did that, but I think that that's the better way, and then we all have heard the same thing instead of our own opinion about something, and we still may have opinions, but after it's read, then we can all discuss.
Okay, so I will read my summary into the record, and then we can discuss my recommendation after each case. Okay, case 1, case number 201-601-9651. Respondent has no complaint history. Complaint was filed by a consumer that alleged that the respondent didn't go by the deed in a survey. The complainant has a quitclaim deed for property that she and her now deceased husband owned. The neighbor of the complainant has allegedly increasingly begun to encroach on her property, and at this point now has a driveway through her property. At the time of purchase, the house on the neighboring property, it should say neighboring property, sorry, was already encroaching on the complainant's land, which is probably why they had a quitclaim deed. The respondent saw a lawyer who encouraged her to pay for a land survey. The respondent surveyor conducted a survey which resulted in showing her that property line was 5 feet less than what she originally thought it would be. The complainant believes that there is certain land markers that vindicate her position and has included pictures. There is also a large plat that she got from record at the courthouse. This complaint and all relevant materials were sent to an expert reviewer. After reviewing the plat and photos provided and other letters from the complainant, the reviewer recommended the following. Based on the preponderance of evidence supplied by the respondent, I find that there is no basis for the complaint. The respondent provided his professional opinion for the survey, and he has relied on evidence found in the field as well as several previous surveys by other surveys, all of which match within reason. Given that recommendation, it appears that the survey conducted by the respondent was a reasonable interpretation of the materials provided. My recommendation was to close the case.
Thank you, Ms. Martin. Is there any items to discuss here by members of the board?
I don't find any personally.
I'd like to ask Ms. Martin a question if I could.
Sure.
Heretofore, before Laura, there's occasions that legal has advised us to dismiss with prejudice. Is that correct, or are you just asking us to dismiss and be done with it?
Sometimes there's reasons to, the language is awkward, but dismiss with prejudice or close and flag. The idea is that if new evidence arises, you could potentially reopen the complaint later. We can do that every time. I usually only recommend that if I see potential for that. And here, the reviewer found nothing wrong. So my recommendation was just to dismiss. If you would prefer to dismiss with prejudice so that if new information arises, we can reopen the complaint, that's
No,
fine.
I didn't see the need for prejudice. I was simply asking the question to make sure I understood when you said dismiss, if you would have actually included with prejudice or not. That was because since it's your first legal report for us, I just wanted to make sure that our nomenclature was similar.
Okay. So when I say dismiss or when I say close, I'm saying let's just be done with it. If I say close and flag or dismiss with prejudice, that's because I see potential for new information to arise.
Chairman, can I clarify?
Yeah.
Sure, yes, please.
A thing, I'm sorry. If we're going to dismiss with prejudice, I would avoid using that term. Either dismiss it if something new arises or some other information comes in, we can go back and look at it. But really, there's no legal grounds to say to add with either close and flag it or dismiss it if the evidence doesn't rise to a certain level. The term with or without prejudice is kind of a term of art and that's used in court rulings, and I would just recommend that it would confuse things to be using those terms. I think dismiss is means the board hasn't found any evidence. should something else arise or something like that, they could take a look at it. But I would recommend that you steer clear from using that term.
Yeah, that might be good advice there to follow.
Thank you very much. I might just add that since we're kind of plowing new ground today, we've had a lot of new things today and new folks and all kinds of new stuff, which is great. It's great and it's wonderful. I just wanted to clarify that point because that has been a path that we have been taking down before.
Okay.
And I wanted to, if I'm not saying the rules of the road have changed, I'm just saying they're being more clarified. I want to go down the clear path.
Sure.
That's
I
all I was trying
appreciate
to
that,
get
Mr. Langerfeld. And anything we can do to assist with that.
Let me ask one question. If you dismiss with prejudice, or let's say we dismiss it, but something new comes up, then what happens?
Oh, we can
You
reopen.
reopen the thing?
Send an investigation back out. When you dismiss it, you mean that what you're saying is the attorney can't recommend going forward, and we can't find enough evidence to say it has hit a level that we think a violation has occurred.
Yeah, I understand
If
that.
some new information comes forward, that could change it.
But then you reopen it, is that
Right.
right? Okay.
Right.
That's just what I
See,
want to say.
we're not a court, so somebody can't
That's
say,
right.
hey, I was found not guilty, so you can't proceed. No, that's not what we do. It's based on what we find out and what information we have.
Thank you very much.
Okay, so we have a narrative of the case itself. We obviously, in addition, this is one part I do like of the review, is that we have some verbiage here by the case reviewer in their findings. And then we also have a recommendation from the staff attorney to dismiss this. Is there any further discussion, or could I entertain a motion?
I make a motion that we accept the staff's approval, or
Second that.
recommendation, rather, not approval, recommendation.
All right, so we have a motion and a second to accept the recommendation to dismiss this case. Any further discussion? All right, all in favor of the motion,
Aye.
say aye. Any opposed? All right, the ayes have it. Case dismissed. We'll move on to case number 2, please.
Number 2, case number 201-602-9871. Respondent has no complaint history. This complaint was filed by a consumer alleging that the respondent has been paid for his job, but he had done it wrong, and so now he is out $50,000 over this mistake. The complainant alleges that the respondent incorrectly performed a land survey. This is a boundary dispute whereby both neighbors believe the other to be encroaching on each other's land. The respondent sent in an explanation that he was hired by the complainant because of pending litigation. The respondent said the complainant bought what he claimed to be 22 acres of land in 1980, but he did not have a survey of the land, and his deed only describes 3.5 acres of land. The complainant has relied on an existing fence that he had improved, and he has been using the 22 acres. There is no survey or deed for the respondent to rely on to say that the claim to property is 22 acres, so he couldn't create a survey saying so. He did believe the complainant had been taken advantage of and is willing to help him by testifying about the fence he had improved, but was not willing to create a survey which the respondent felt would be an improper use of his license. This case was sent to an expert reviewer along with the deeds of the land. The reviewer reports that, I agree with the respondent's assessment as to the reason for the complaint, that he has maintained more land than is spelled out in his deed. This case is baseless and should be dismissed. There appears to be no wrongdoing by the respondent. My recommendation is that we dismiss this complaint.
Again, we've got a pretty good overview of the events that took place here. I think he used the word, swindle? Is that what he used? I'm trying to remember the word. He said, taking advantage of, excuse me, not swindle. 3.5 acres to 22 acres, obviously had maintained a fence. And the surveyor who had the complaint filed against, based on the case reviewer, basically stood his ground and took the right course. Is there any other discussion we want to take here?
I think so. No, sir.
Do anything, sir? All right. Cut and dry. I'll entertain a motion for approval of the recommendation.
I'll second.
All right, any further discussion? All right, hearing none, all in favor say aye. Aye. Any opposed? All right, case dismissed. Item number 3, please.
Item number 3, case number 20150215801. The respondent does have history, 2 complaints from 2007 and 1 from 2011. This complaint was filed by a consumer and alleged that the respondent inserted an easement into a legal description and survey that he knew was false because he created it as a part of a scheme to sell lots on false pretenses. The complaint alleges that the respondent, along with the owner of the adjacent property, worked together to erase an easement that had been granted in perpetuity, once in 1999 and again in 2015. So for purposes of this, I named this easement X Lane. The complainant, who is a realtor, caught this mistake in a 1999 survey and questioned the respondent before the sale of the land. The respondent allegedly threatened to draw a road through the middle of the property for sale if he didn't back down. In the 2015 survey, the easement was completely erased. The respondent and the other landowner suggested the respondent buy a tract of land so he would have road access, despite the easement that should have been available to him. The respondent has never replied to this department regarding this complaint. This complaint was sent to an expert reviewer along with all maps, deeds, contracts, and photos provided by the complainant. The reviewer's overall conclusion was that the surveyor had violated standards of practice and exhibited a clear lack of general surveying knowledge and law. He found him to be overall incompetent, and then I went through the specific violations. Monumentation, violation by ignoring the call for X Lane, a critical monument location, and indicating a 24-foot red oak tree for a 10-foot gum tree called out in the deed. No evidence provided by surveyor about any marking located on the 24-foot red oak tree given credence for using the red oak versus locating a gum tree, which would be a larger diameter, now closer to X Lane. X Lane location verified by reviewer based upon review of USGS maps dated 1936 and 1950s. Copies were attached, so I did get to review those. Incompetence. The original deed description calls for property to the edge of a Y river, surveyed, signed, and dated by respondent. It was not signed by the surveyor. Appears to indicate that the center of Y river was the edge of the property. No text call indicating whether line is center line of river or edge of river as called for in deed. Surveyor attempted to place property lines on ground using exact distances called for in deed, apparently not considering the differences of old surveying methods as opposed to present-day surveying technology. The existing X Lane critical monument location ignored easily verified by examining USGS maps. Ignored calls in deed for X Lane and named trees indicate lack of surveying law knowledge or incompetence. Concur with respondent property should border road known as X Road by deed. Moving property line from X Road location landlocks the complainant's property. No response about complaint provided by surveyor, indication of incompetence, not willing to defend his actions. Accuracy of survey. Survey states a Category 1 survey and that the ratio of precision of the unadjusted survey as, I don't really understand these numbers.
1 in 10,000.
1 in 10,000. This is a direct violation of standards of practice. Impossible to be exactly 1 in 10,000, and he was supposed to show precision of an unadjusted survey. Seals. 3 surveys provided by complainant do not bear the registrant's seal required by TCA 6218-119. And 3 surveys bearing the same date, each different with a revision note. My recommendation was to authorize for formal hearing, allow authority to settle by consent order, assessing revocation. So that, I pretty much took the language exactly that the reviewer had given me and tried to break it down into the specifics. It seemed pretty bad to me, but
Yeah, we certainly
you'll have to read it and tell me if you.
Yep, that was
It seemed very bad to me, but like I said, I wasn't entirely always sure what I was.
right. Excellent review. I got to give you credit for that right there. I'll tell you, there's 4 things that stand out to me right here. Number 1, there's a complaint history. And not just one case, several cases. All right, that's the first thing. The second thing that stood out to me was obviously some issues with this easement. 2 different surveys at different times. One shows the easement, one doesn't. Some issues there with purchase of property, all sorts of red flags. The next thing that stands out to me is, as well as you itemize the monumentation, the incompetence, the accuracy, the seals, we've got issues right there, numerous issues right there. And then the fourth one really that really bothers me a lot is the fact that the respondent has never replied to the department. that's an issue. What I see here is, number one, a history, and number two, a continuation of kind of going down the wrong path, so to speak. And third, basically just a complete disregard and disrespect to this board. In that the respondent did not reply, and that bothers me. I don't see any indication that based on his history that he or she is changing their ways. And I think the recommendation there, although is stern, I think is effective. Your thoughts are on these?
I have to agree with Jay, because I saw the very same things that he's seeing, and I just doesn't believe that that's their responsibility of being licensed by this board to respond to this board when something comes up. That's a problem.
Question, Ms. Martin. Obviously, I'm very familiar with the formal hearing, but you're asking for the respondent to voluntarily give their license up. If they don't, then they'll go to formal hearing, which all bets are off, then I understand that. Do you feel like, and the board, do we feel like that this rises to the level of revocation? And if it does, what would be the difference if we voted to revoke the surveyor's license as our recommendation, as opposed, in other words, a severe recommendation as opposed to yours?
So a little bit of this is going to be me learning what I'm going to try to recommend what I assume the board is going to want to go with.
Done a good job.
This seemed pretty harsh to me. Like I said, I'm sure I'll learn a little bit more about surveying just in reading this stuff over and over again, but this seemed very bad to me, especially the nefarious nature of all of it seemed pretty bad. So that's why I assessed revocation along with the history. If this is the kind of thing that you're thinking, wow, this is his third complaint, maybe we just assess a penalty.
No, you're not getting my question.
No, I don't think so then.
So you don't know, I'm the bad guy on the board.
Uh-huh.
I'm the guy that throws the larger brick.
Okay.
So what I was simply asking was, if you, as our legal advisor, had an issue, if the board made a decision to revoke based on the evidence found, because as Jay aptly said, there's two heavy-hitting issues here. Mm-hmm. One is a complaint history. Mm-hmm. And the last time that there was a complaint, we extended an olive branch of a letter of caution, I think it is, LOC, if I remember that correctly. And now in this whole scenario that is very egregious, the respondent isn't even communicating with us. So I mean, they're blowing us off as though, well, you know, I've been before you before and you've smacked my hand, and you probably aren't going to do any more worse, so why should I waste my time? I mean, that's what I read between the lines. Why should I waste my time communicating with you? So what I'm saying is, I have no problem at all with your recommendation whatsoever, but I just wonder if it rises to the level that we just go ahead and do it.
Rather than to have a formal hearing, just
Right.
go ahead and we vote for revocation.
Unless I misunderstand something in your statutes, I don't think that we can take somebody's license without offering them a formal hearing.
I'm not going to disagree with you legally because you have a much greater legal mind than I do, but I believe it says we have that ability. Do it faster than I can find it in that thing. Then I'll find it over there. Order 62-18-116, paragraph 3, subsection C. It says, affirmative vote of a majority of the members of the board shall be necessary in order to revoke the certificate of registration of any land surveyor registered thereunder, or reissue certificate of registration to any person whose certificate has been revoked. Ties that directly to any kind of hearing.
Sir? Go ahead.
Mr. Chairman, Mr. Lingerfeld, that is at a hearing, because under the Uniform Administrative Procedures Act, we have to, which is what we operate when we administer regulatory law, and that's at 4-5-301, and the following subsections. We have to provide notice before taking any action that affects a property right, and extend due process, which means tell them what we are alleging they have violated, and an opportunity to cure that or have a formal hearing before the board can take a majority vote, as in your statute, to revoke a license.
That really was why I was asking, because it's not in our rules, it's in the rules of engagement that you all deal with.
Correct.
If that's
It-
fair. However, I will say that it's not been very long ago that we revoked a license because of moral turpitude, I guess is the best way of saying it.
And my guess is that was a summary suspension, which is also allowed under 4-5-321, where somebody is an immediate threat to the public, to the health, safety, and welfare of the public. If we had evidence that this person was doing this right now, and I don't know what the date of this action is, we might be here suggesting that we take a vote for summary suspension. But even when you do that, you have to give them a time to appear before the board to explain their side.
I guess I had my blinders on dealing strictly with what rules and statutes that we have as part of us, not really thinking about that you all had other things that we needed to be able to deal with. But I appreciate you pointing that out.
Yes, sir.
So that answers the question I was trying to get at with you very well. Thank you very much.
Well, it sounds like the path that we're trying to get to is both the same, both from staff recommendation and from what I feel is the consent of the board here for trying to begin the process for revocation of the license.
I'll make a motion that we accept the legal response to this particular case.
I'll second that.
All right, motion and a second. Anything further? All in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, staff recommendation is accepted on item number 3 there.
Okay. Reference item number 4, Ms. Martin came to me and has informed me that it's possible the respondent has spoken to me about this particular case.
Complainant told me
The
they had spoken
complainant?
to you.
Okay, and I must either act as chair in this case, so I don't take a vote on it, or I'll sit calmly by while you two handle this particular case.
Let me just ask, if that is the situation where he chooses to recuse himself from the vote, obviously we don't have a majority on the board here with our public member not being here, can we still proceed with that?
Did you review the complaint?
I'm sorry?
Did you review the complaint?
I have not completely. I
No.
read through it, but just give
Do
me a
you know
minute.
what complaint, do you have any idea what this situation is about?
You go ahead and read it in here. I'll take a look
Okay.
at it, and then I can tell you if I should excuse myself
I
on it.
think,
Let me answer the chairman's
Okay.
question. I'm sorry.
I'm just trying to see what all the options are.
You
first.
can take a vote, a two-man, if you have a three-man quorum and one recuses himself. Obviously, if it's a tie, then whatever motion you make doesn't pass. But if you have two, two to nothing, you had 2 ayes or 2 nays, that carries. But if you have
Chairman,
1 and 1,
Being chairman, I can vote on it?
Yes.
On this particular item, even though you
yes.
refuse? Okay, that's fine.
Absolutely.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, let's go ahead and read through it first, and
Okay.
then we'll see what Galen chooses.
Case number 20150222421. No complaint history. This complaint was filed by a licensed surveyor alleging that he discovered recorded documents with his RLS seal placed on the site exhibit and his signature forged across the seal by the respondent. Our records show that the respondent has a denied application. The complainant sent in many documents with his seal and signature that he claims to have no knowledge of whatsoever. The respondent had worked with the complainant for several years, but they parted ways in 2004. The respondent says they parted on good terms but maintained a friendship over the years. The complainant claims he released the respondent from employment for a matter similar to the complaint here. The complainant provided a document that bears the complainant's seal and signature. The document also has the respondent's business logo, address, and the respondent's name on it. This was created in 2015. The complainant says he has not worked with the complainant since 2004. Oh, I'm sorry, that should say respondent. The complainant says he has not worked with the respondent since 2004. But the respondent says they have worked together on projects on and off since his initial employment. The respondent claimed that at no time has he ever presented himself as a licensed surveyor. However, the name of his company is a name, so I put XXXX Surveyors LLC. This was sent to an expert reviewer, and the reviewer found that the respondent had violating the following statutes: 62-18-101, practicing land surveying without a valid license, in section 120, presenting or attempting to file as that person's own the certificate of registration of another, falsely impersonating any other practitioner, and then a person shall be construed to practice or offer to practice land surveying who by verbal claim, sign, advertisement, letterhead, card, or any other way represents the person to be a land surveyor with or without qualifying adjectives or through the use of some other title that implies the person is a land surveyor. Authorized for formal hearing, allow authority to settle by consent order assessing $5,000.
Yes, I do recall an individual that has talked to me about it, and so I will excuse myself from it.
I do have a question. What authority, in this situation where the respondent is not a licensed surveyor, what authority does this board have over that person who is not a licensed surveyor?
So he doesn't have a license for us to revoke, which is why I assessed a penalty of $5,000, because we can do $1,000 per violation. And there are 4 different sections of the statute he violated, plus they showed us more than one instance where the seal had been used. So the authority is, the only authority the board has over unlicensed persons is for unlicensed activity. Yes. We can't apply, obviously, standards of practice to an unlicensed person. And I know that Mr. Cleveland had recommended sending this to the DA. We can do that. I've had a hard time getting the DAs to pick up our cases, but I went for as high a penalty as I felt like comfortable coming up with, but.
Yeah, obviously the main 2 issues here that I'm seeing is the forgery of the signature and seal of a previous employer from 11 years back, and then also the advertising of a company. This one just amazes me that you go through this. XXX Surveyors LLC, and then claiming that he doesn't offer himself as a surveyor. Pretty crazy that there's people out there doing this kind of thing, and I agree. If we need to go after this person for this kind of activity, we need to hit him as hard as we can. Quite honestly, I mean that's just embarrassing. That is a danger to the public, and that is a danger to the profession, which I think we're both here to serve and protect. Tim, you have any thoughts on this?
One question I have is, if it was proven when this person began to advertise his business in 2015, our penalty section of our statute allows for a penalty of a range of something to something, we obviously topping out at $1,000, and that's on a per-day basis. It's my notion that whenever this person started that business and advertised as surveying whatever, from that point until this complaint is brought in front of this board, it's X number of dollars per day. That's my opinion.
That is one way to calculate it. I had not thought of that.
So, if it's been, I don't care what it is. If it's 400 days and it's $400,000, I don't care about that. I mean, because this in my mind, as Jay more adequately said, is about as bad as it gets. That's a total threat to the public first and to the profession second, period. So, it's my notion that if we've got a date of when this commenced to whenever this happened, it's that times $1,000, and that's my recommendation.
file to get those specific dates.
I would just, as you all are considering these kind of penalties, I don't know what that's going to come out to. That sounds like a pretty high number based on what you stated. And I think one of the things I would point out is that the penalties that you all do implement are subject to our public, and as the legislature has been looking at boards generally. And so I would just say, as you think about those penalties, thinking about the impact of the level of one of the things that we're looking at, and we get asked the most consistently about, is the idea of equity in those penalties. And so obviously, I would just state, as you're thinking through it, and you have legal justification for the reasons, just to be conscious of setting penalties at a rate that are, even if you have the authority to do something in terms of scope, doesn't necessarily mean that those are always looked upon favorably. And so I just bring that up as a point of consideration as you make those decisions, because they are going to be looked at and reviewed. So
Say this in conclusion of what you just said, Mr. McCormick. I don't necessarily disagree with you, and I understand that you've got lots and lots of eyes looking at what we do and what everybody does. I understand that. But, this rises to what it says we're supposed to do, the severity of the violation and the risk of harm to the public. That rises to that. The economic benefits gained by the violator as a result of noncompliance. Okay, if this person has been doing surveying since sometime in 2015 till now, whenever this complaint happened, whenever it was, whatever that date window is, this person has taken money, and that's the way I know how to say it, has taken money from the general public, from ever how many clients that he's had. That might be $1, it might be a couple $100,000. I don't know. I have no idea. No idea, and we'll never know because we can't, audit him or something of that nature. But what I'm saying is, he has been doing that, and that rises to the highest level of what our penalty speaks to. And that's why that I feel like it's appropriate to follow suit with what the rule says under civil penalties.
If I can address that, at this point, we don't know how many days that is in the file. We can, when this complaint, but we still don't. We know he contracted or agreed to do it on a day. He did a thing on a day. And so we don't know how many days in between that he actually worked and practiced unlicensed surveying. Now, he may have had an ad up for a certain amount of time, and that certainly would, at this point, we don't know how many days that is. So what typically, and Mr. Lingerfeld, you are absolutely correct, whatever we can prove at a formal hearing how long he operated, the board could hit him per day for $1,000. And if that was 400 days, that would be, like you said, $400,000 as proven at a hearing. What you might do, and did this person respond? Did this respondent respond? Okay. Is you might want to set the consent order, a civil penalty, as high as you possibly can, based on a reasonable amount of days that we think he was operating. And then if he doesn't accept that at the formal hearing, then the state's going to have to prove how many days he was operating, and the board's going to make that determination. And if it's 360 days that he operated, then the board can take action at that point. But right now, we haven't had a final determination of fact. We just have a substantiated allegation that
And I didn't expect either you or Ms. Martin to know what the magic number was. I didn't expect that. I just wanted to point that out because I'm so concerned about this type of activity relative to the public and to the profession.
Sure.
And I think we're speaking the same thing.
Correct.
I just happened to throw out an example of numbers and whatever, but I think we're speaking the same thing. And I think you're right. In my mind, $5,000 is not enough, but we have to be able to justify whatever the number is that is enough, okay? And I agree with you 100%, because I think if the number was larger, the likelihood of this person wanting to come to formal hearing would probably be pretty strong. And then we could really, the state, well, we and the state could actually find out what the true facts of the case are. And then the board as a jury could then react to whatever those facts are.
Ms. Martin, what was the basis behind the suggestion of $5,000?
She told us that.
Did she? I missed that.
I tried to count the amount of violations I found, but I didn't consider the longevity of those violations. And then some of that is I'm new to the board where things are just kind of different in different statutes, but I found 4 separate statutes that had been violated that had to do with unlicensed surveying. And then there was also the website that he had used with the Surveyors LLC, and then also he had a document where he had printed his business logo address and his name on it, which had that same Surveyors LLC. So that's how I came up with $5,000. I have sent Margaret to look at the file to see if she can substantiate some dates just from what we have, but I don't know if we have that enough information yet to determine days. But what we could do is hold off on this case until she comes back down and lets me know what she found, if that's something you would want to do.
Might be worthwhile right there.
And is Ms. Martin, is the maximum penalty for unlicensed activity $1,000 in the land surveyors?
Per day?
Per day?
Per day.
Right.
Per day, per violation.
Okay.
Two things, based on your construction, you mentioned that he violated, or the respondent, I don't know if it's he or she, violated Section A and Section B of 101. Those are 2 separate violations, each penalized by $1,000 per day potentially. The others are 120. We only have 2 options there, which that's another $2,000. But the key in this whole equation is in
That
your
120 had 3.
in your narrative. Well, there's let me look at 120. But anyway, in your narrative, you made the comment that the complainant sent in many documents with his seal and signature that he claims to have no knowledge of whatsoever. Many. I don't know how many is. And that was in your narrative, and that was what really raised my eyebrow to, well, how many is many? Is many 2? Is many 10?
Okay.
So when we were talking
I
about
might need to re-review this complaint.
a
I was
justifiable
not thinking about number of
number.
times. I was trying to
Yeah.
think of separate violations.
Yeah.
So,
well, normally
let's
speaking,
hold off on making a decision on this complaint until I can re-review the file. And then, maybe when we get done with the rest of the legal report, I can run upstairs and look at the file while you go on to the next order of business.
and normally speaking, if this was a registrant, obviously not using a seal in order, and there were several plats, it would be easier. It would be easier to deal with. But it being a non-registrant, it's a separate situation.
I agree.
Okay, so we'll kind of postpone
Okay.
that one,
Okay.
All right.
perhaps until you get a little more information on it. Okay, very good.
Okay.
All right, item number 5.
So this is case number 20150217461. This complaint was filed by a consumer and alleged that the respondent disregarded the complainant's property and fence and marked a new property line between him and his neighbors. The complainant tried this in civil court. Trial was held in February of 2015. The judge ruled in the complainant's favor, and he was awarded $10,000. The final order notes that the damages to the plaintiff exceeded $10,000, but the parties had agreed at the commencement of the suit to cap damages at $10,000. At trial, another surveyor who had been hired by the complainant testified. He claimed that methods by which the respondent conducted his survey were not any methods he was familiar with, and he did not agree with the conclusions he had found. This case was sent to an expert reviewer. The reviewer found that the respondent did not include an exclusion on one of the tracts of land, and he believes this was the source of confusion between the neighbors and the source of the lawsuit. The reviewer further states that this case was particularly difficult to review because the deeds of the two adjoining properties at issue do not relate to each other, but he said relationships of tracts are not required on surveys. He found that not including the exclusion on one of the tracts that the surveyor had acted negligently. The reviewer recommended that this was only borderline incompetence and that he felt the majority of the survey had been done correctly. My recommendation was to authorize for formal hearing and allow for authority to settle by consent order assessing $1,000.
Okay, and again, there's no complaint history against this surveyor. Sounds like the case had already gone to court at one point and was ruled in the complainant's favor. And awarded, I guess that was in a civil court, yeah, and it was awarded $10,000. The reviewer, the expert reviewer, stated that it was a difficult to review the deeds because of some issues between the two don't have any relationship with each other. And he found, not including the exclusion on one of the tracts that the surveyor, in his opinion, had acted negligently. I think this is one that we had before, perhaps, and then we
Last meeting.
sent it back to the reviewer, and now the reviewer has had an opportunity to go over the case, and we obviously have a recommendation here from staff. Any thoughts?
I'm struggling with the reviewer's comment that the two adjoining parcels at issue do not relate to each other. I'm struggling with that comment. That I don't know. Don't sound right.
Sounds like they, from what I took that, they don't have a common call to each other. In other words, one doesn't reference the other in their deeds.
That's what I understood it to mean. That was my summary of what he said. They didn't show like how they relate to each other.
Not adjoining apparently, so if they're not adjoining, then they don't have any pertinence one to the other.
No, this says they're adjoining.
Yeah, they are adjoining, but
It'd be kinda
apparently.
like, based
two
on what Jay
adjoining.
said, it would be kinda like if you had point A was a monument and point B was a monument, and on the survey to client A over here, it was a straight line. Well, then over here on client B went from the monument to a fence, and ended up at a monument. So you ended up with the line being described two different ways.
Different
Now, that's what
ways.
I'm hearing Jay say.
And if that's the case, then I do see the adjoining, I just didn't look
They're
at it.
adjoining, but apparently they don't have,
They're described differently.
it seemed to me they'd have to have some kind of common information as far as,
Other
you know,
than a-
one on each end or something.
Yeah, other than the two ends or what have you.
Let's focus back on what the reviewer did find.
Okay.
That apparently there was an exclusion in one of the tracks that was not addressed by the surveyor.
Meaning an exception.
An exception, yes.
Okay.
Exclusion,
Okay.
exception, I take those to be one and the same.
Okay.
That was not addressed, and then the reviewer claimed that was some source of confusion and probably the source of why there was an issue here. And the reviewer goes so far as to say that the surveyor, in their opinion, the surveyor had acted negligently. And so that seems to be the meat of the situation here, based on the reviewer's opinion, was the exclusion, or was the not including the exclusion or exception, whichever way you want to put it. We have an authorization for a formal hearing with allowing to settle by consent order of $1,000 penalty.
What section were you looking at, Ms. Martin, relative to, I guess I'd have to say negligence? I'm trying to put this back together in my mind, how you've done it.
So if you look at 62-18-116, you can revoke, suspend, refuse to renew, or take other lawful disciplinary action. And then if you look at B, it says any incompetency, misconduct, or gross negligence in the practice of land surveying. That was the section I felt that the reviewer thought he violated.
had some discussion relative to the action that we were considering, requiring some education.
There was, yeah. I think 16 hours is what our recommendation was at the time of boundary. I don't recall that we suggested a penalty, a fee penalty. All
We
that.
suggested a suspension.
Mhm.
We suggested a suspension with up to 6 months, or seems to me until the respondent got the continuing education. That's right. I think that's what we did. Now, Ms. Martin may have records to correct us on that, but my recollection, matter of fact, I think Mr. Green presented.
Well, we can change, so my recommendation was $1,000. We can change that to 16 hours of a specific type of education. That's fine.
You know, I'm all in favor of education. If the penalty is to educate the registrant, I think that is much more effective than to penalize them monetarily. You know, granted, they'll be out some money in order to obtain those PD8 hours. I don't know. I don't think it'd be $1,000. I hope not. But I just always believe that if we educate them as the penalty, so to speak, is more effective than just a monetary where they write a check and then they're back out surveying the next day. And what did they gain from it? Nothing, other than losing a few dollars out of the wallet. So I'm more inclined to do this. I'm more in favor of a letter of some sort in the file, a stern letter about you know, the potential of negligence based on his prior acts, based on this survey. And then also, I still like the 16 hours of boundary-related PDH. I think the advantages there is for everybody. I think that's a win-win on everybody's part. A penalty is assessed. The registrant gains education. There's a letter put into the
We still
file.
have to go by consent order, though.
Okay.
We can do a letter, but we
Yeah,
have
but-
to do a consent order
Just 16 hours?
to binding.
That's fine. Yeah, that's
to
fine.
it.
Yeah,
'Cause
just to make it-
then if he doesn't, accept it, then it's coming for a formal hearing,
Right.
and he's gonna get, by a chance, to have a lot more than 16 hours of
That's fine.
education.
Yeah, the mechanism to get there, I think, we're going to the same place. You just know the correct mechanism of getting there.
A letter of warning, and then, no, not a letter of
You're
warning.
saying
Yeah, just do a
no
consent
letter.
order and the
So I'm
discipline.
gonna go ahead and say we're gonna authorize this for formal charges, but we can settle by a consent order that assesses 16 hours of any type of continuing education or
Boundary-related,
boundary.
boundary-related continuing education. Would it be fair to have a window of time, have a window of time to have that completed?
6
So,
months.
so the board can or the board or the legal, I guess you all recognize if it's complete or not.
I think 6 months is more than generous, I think.
I think so too. Yeah.
I think it's
I
fair.
think we defer to the board on that, because I don't know how long,
That's,
long it takes to register and go
gosh,
through,
you can get it in 48 hours, you could, but,
So,
I think December 31st would be fine.
yeah,
Is that reasonable?
yeah, absolutely. By the end of the year, December 31st, 2016. All right, and just to make clarification, because we had addressed it somewhat just a minute ago, that there is no inference here of suspension of a license of any kind at any time,
And there's no monetary penalty.
and no monetary penalty.
and just for, I don't think, I think we all came to the same conclusion, but I'm not sure. Did we do a motion, Mr. Chairman?
We haven't yet, no. sir.
Okay.
Not, no.
We have not
No,
yet.
okay.
We're working that way.
Okay.
Still getting the last answers in
I
place.
think if we got all the i's dotted, t's crossed there with the details that we're after, I'd certainly entertain the motion.
Mr. Chairman, I make a motion that we authorize a consent order for 16 hours of continuing education in boundary-related courses. And obviously, if the consent order goes unsaid with the consent order.
With the deadline of,
with the deadline of December 31st, 2016.
and that's also authorization of a formal hearing, is that correct?
Correct.
Okay.
So moved. Oh, so seconded.
Seconded. All right, any further discussion? All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right. That closes it for item number 5, and I believe on the updated report, we have 2 more items. Is that right, Ms. Martin? All right, we can proceed with item number 6, please.
Case number 201-601-8761. There's no complaint history. Complaint was filed by a consumer regarding a boundary dispute. The complaint alleges that respondent conducted a faulty survey of the land in 2013, which led to a builder encroaching on complainant's property. Complainant rehired respondent in 2015 in order to review and correct the allegedly wrong survey from 2013. Complainant alleges that the 2015 survey was purposely wrong in an attempt to cover up respondent's faulty survey in 2013. This case was sent to an expert reviewer. The reviewer found that the respondent had not committed any violations. The reviewer states that the respondent prepared a grading plan for preparing no-rise permit, not a survey for construction of a built-in encroachment. The reviewer further states that the builder located the construction location without the benefit of a boundary line survey. The reviewer also states that respondent indicated a possible overlap in property lines, and respondent recommended that complainant contact a title attorney to resolve any boundary line issues. There appears to be no wrongdoing by the respondent. I recommend we close this case.
All right, sounds pretty straightforward, especially with the recommendation of the expert reviewer who did have an opportunity to review it and has given their opinion on it. Is there any discussion here on this one? I think pretty
Cut and dried.
straightforward. All right. Good, we'll accept the motion
I
on it.
make the motion that we accept the recommendation to close it.
Second.
All right, close the second. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? No? All right, we'll accept the recommendation there by staff. All right, we'll move on to item number 7, please.
Case number 201-601-4001. Respondent had a complaint against them in 2005 that was closed. Complaint filed by a consumer alleging that respondent failed to perform proper research and did not contact any adjoining property owners on a survey. The complaint alleges that respondent's survey indicated a property to be 21.961 acres, but the plat and deed indicated that the property was 24.6 acres. Complainant states that the error was due to the location of a fence across the property, formerly a separate piece of property that was eventually bought by the previous property owner. Complainant alleges that a survey conducted in 1978 accurately reflects the acreage of the property following the acquisition of land beyond the fence. This case was sent to an expert reviewer. The reviewer found that the respondent violated the following rules. Rule 0820-03-.07 1B7, survey types and requirements. The certification of survey does not indicate actual ratio of precision of the unadjusted survey. That was it. So my recommendation was authorize for formal hearing, allow authority to settle by consent order assessing $250.
On the complaint history, there was a previous case back in, looks like 2005 perhaps. Do we have any idea what that one was about?
No.
Okay.
If it was closed, then we probably wouldn't have kept any notes.
It doesn't sound to me like, based on the reviewer's opinion, that it has any issue with the survey itself in terms of the interpretation of the deed to the boundary, to the conflict of the acreage, allegations of the fence, things like that. Rather, the only thing that the reviewer found was an issue with the certificate. Does not indicate the actual ratio of precision. Requesting a formal hearing with allowed to settle by consent order of $250. I don't know. I think there's worse things in the world on a survey to be than this right here. I don't know that the level of severity of this infraction. Obviously there's other options that are available to us. What do you think, Ian?
Well, I think the difference in acreage that came up here could be the difference in your survey and mine, and I may have tied to something entirely different. I don't see that that anything on here, in my opinion, as a surveyor, is a violation of anything that he's done other than whatever certificate he put on the survey. If he put down there that it was a Category 3 survey and it's actually a Category 1, or vice versa, rather, then, okay, and the survey didn't close by the required amount or whatever the problem is, yeah, that's a problem. But if that's the only thing I see, that,
A letter of warning would be more appropriate?
I'm sorry?
Would you think a letter of warning would be more appropriate?
Probably so. I just don't see, if that's the only thing and he has not done what he should have done in this case, because I'm gonna have a difference of opinion acreage-wise, maybe not that great an acreage, but, with any other surveyor that goes out on this piece of property. So, that's matters of opinion. If we went to the same place, we ought to come up with something similar to the same answer. So, there again, I'm not sure what the story was. The reviewer didn't seem to find anything wrong with the survey. So if that's the case, I don't find anything wrong with what the reviewer has found other than what he claimed the category of survey was.
Tim, you throw a bigger brick?
We're definitely in the letter category, whether it be caution or warning. I'll leave that up to Ms. Martin to point us, and we'll make a motion. So
The letter of warning, that's the most stern.
Letter of warning is appropriate. The reviewer did find a small violation, so it's appropriate to send a letter of warning.
A letter of warning to the respondent.
I'll second that.
All right, any further discussion? All right, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
And opposed? All right, letter of warning it is.
As far as case 4, kind of in between during your discussion, I've been flipping through these documents. So far, I have found at least one specific instance where the complainant seal was used on a survey that also bears the company name of the respondent, and I'm still looking through, but as I'm reviewing it, I spoke with the complainant about this case extensively, and he kept telling me he kept finding them, but he might have only sent me just this one. So it might not be as many documents as I had recalled now that I'm reviewing this for like another time. So I don't know if you want to let me keep reviewing this or if you want to discuss that and come back to it.
I think what I'd like to do is with that opportunity, since we do have a chunk of time coming up here that we're going to dedicate toward the applications, I think if we can allow you to do additional research to make you comfortable, that we'll take that opportunity to use that overlapping time to kind of kill two birds with one stone, and then maybe as we progress to the end of the day, kind of toward the end of the applications, if you think you've had adequate time, you can come back and give us an update on it. Does that work?
That works.
Okay. All right, with that being said, I think we've worked our way through the legal report, excluding the item number 4 that we still have hanging out there. We'll come back to that. And with that, I think what I'm going to suggest is a 5-minute break here, restroom break. And
Okay. So here's what I have, essentially. I have the 4 statutes that he violated. And to prove that he violated those statutes, I have the one instance of actually his seal where he used the respondent's seal with the complainant's address. I have his LinkedIn page where he's holding himself out to be a surveyor. And then I also have that he registered with the Secretary of State as a surveyor. I think I was confused because the complainant who had called me had told me he had several documents with that seal, and I told him to send him to me, but he sent me a lot of documents, but only one of them had the seal, which is where I think I got mixed up earlier. So with that in mind, do you want to change the $5,000 penalty, or no?
Clarify, I was doing another thing and listening at the same time, which sometimes I don't really do real well. So let me just clarify for just Tim. You have 5 things or more.
I have 4 statutes. I have 3 instances, but some of them I think violate more than one. So for instance, practicing land surveying without a license. So that's definitely proved by him using a seal. I also
How many
think that
occasions of that do you have?
I have the one.
One, okay.
And I apologize. I had confused what I had in the file with what the complainant had told me. But I think that his use of the seal violates practicing land surveying without a license and also presenting or attempting to file that person's own certificate of registration with another. So I think that violates two
Or
things.
up to three.
I think that violates falsely impersonating another practitioner. So that one instance, I think, violates 3 statutes. Then I have him filing with the Secretary of State as a land surveyor, and then I have him holding himself out online as a land surveyor. And so I'm still at 5. I guess my issue with 5 is I think what he did is very bad, and so 5 seems low to me, but that seems to be what I can get to.
Well, this is just an opinion. I think anything more than, I'm gonna say a couple $1,000s, he's not going to step up to the plate with, and he's gonna come to a formal. That's my opinion.
I would agree.
Yeah, I would agree with that also.
So, you know, in that spirit, I mean, he may, the respondent may, but in that spirit, I think we'll go with what she recommends, Jay.
5,000?
Yeah.
We'll authorize the formal hearing.
So yeah, what the recommendation is that we authorize the formal hearing, but we allow authority to settle by consent order. So when I send someone a consent order, in my cover letter, I explain to them, this has been authorized for formal charges, but if you would like to forego that, this is what the board has assessed, they will settle your case for. Mm-hmm.
Well, I have to agree with what you guys have said. This is still case number 4, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And since I've had a little.
But like I
Sway
say,
you, but
I
I'm
mean,
not gonna sway you
you
any
know,
further.
we're gonna put the ball in the respondent's court,
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
and then we'll react appropriately from there. Is that fair?
Okay, we'll make a motion of it?
Make a motion that we accept legal's recommendation.
Okay, I'll second that. All in favor, say aye.
Aye. Thank you very much for your extra work on that, Ms. Martin.
Yeah, absolutely. Good work.
That was the first legal report I did for you.
Great job.
You did a great job.
It really was. It was
You
outstanding.
did a great job.
Great.
We learned something new today, and maybe you did too, so that's always positive. I love to learn.
Yeah.
All right, with that, we'll, I think that covers everything on the legal,
That's-
I think legal report, okay? We'll
I
get
can
back
say
to, the business at hand here with reviewing applications. The professor, Melhorn over at Martin, you know her.
Yeah.
Her PhD was from Memphis. I did not know.
Oh, I didn't know that. I did not know that.
Mississippi State for
Okay.
undergrad and master's.
Yeah, I knew she
and-
went to
and
Mississippi
PhD.
State, yeah. How about that? After next.
Was, what you sent me there about New Mexico State.
Oh, yeah.
One of her plants did not have the standards. Sent me a PDF, which I have.
Okay.
I don't think it's in there. see specific. Yeah. Yeah, if you, the letter-sized versions are the new versions.
Okay.
And if you need to see them in.
Right ahead, Gail. I'm done with that one. Cleared the room again, Jay.
That's ultimately the objective, is it
Yeah,
not?
yeah. I don't think we can run Cody off, though. He's gonna hang with us.
Tough time doing that one.
He added the
Surveyor's note.
please state other information regarding the applicant. Good guy.
Yeah.
Guy says his qualifications are beyond a reproach.
Right.
Wow. Okay. I think I was thinking the same thing. Big guy, beyond reproach. He's tall. He's tall.
The next applicant is Justin Allen Parrish, who you may remember from our last meeting. We were contacted by his local state senator to reconsider his application. We reviewed it to determine what requirements were left for him to satisfy, because the ultimate determination of the board was we couldn't approve him yet. He just didn't have the experience. So we figured out how much experience he would need, the 2 years. We wrote back to Justin and his senator, and the clock for him hit on July 26th. So, and we acknowledged this at our last meeting, which meant technically he could apply at this meeting. He would just have to have done it yesterday, and so that's what we did for him.
Site location, there's no POB.
He submitted an initial application before the deadline, but obviously he could not claim his experience at that point, so he sent all that documentation in yesterday. He should be good to go.
Thank you.
He can come down and look at it. Okay.
Yeah. There's some of them I just get stuck on and.
Reagan,
Was Reagan a state rep too?
I don't know.
Wow. He said ignorant is what they said. I'm like, what? Who put that down?
I don't think we want that.
Wow. I got you.
That really matters, because I've turned him down on 2 of them, so. Pages on that one particular plat. The plat, I think that there was a total of 2 with the Alta survey and then one other one. Okay, that's fine. Thanks.
Giving him time to make things spin is part of the problem.
Two ones, we were
I believe that's correct.
particular with that. I've got it right here. In the rules of conduct.
There was a guy, I don't remember if it was this guy, that did not. And I, you know,
The registrant shall superimpose.
We're coming here from now on. I mean, that's just the way it is.
You know the right.
Fine, Cody. Okay. Hey, you were just talking about submitted before.
correct.
Parrish, I thought I recognized the name.
Tuesday.
Yikes.
So part of his application.
Read this. It says nothing about legal description.
Stanley, you're just down here pounding it.
Well, this is where I need the help on the courses. It's probably,
That's the category.
That's the one I got.
I won't let it get.
I'm not a big fan of the NCWS rep.
Oh, it's like.
The main thing that I look for is if the person is on. The
Exactly.
main thing I look for.
Yep.
Because the rest of it's a little bit
Yep.
It's a
heavy
lot,
lifting, you know?
yeah.
Cody.
Experience post FS.
This one's pretty straightforward.
There's the blue folder.
10-year.
That's the way I know Karen. I've got a Karen here.
Oh, the picture. Don't know.
Well, Nicola would pretty well.
Oh, that probably did.
I heard there. She must have a lot liked it.
Well, technically 6. There's one that's really quick.
Red pen, where's the red pen?
We got a few of those. I don't know off the top of my head if, are we sure the PLSI?
That's something that we didn't get to today, obviously, but we were in the process.
So, we want to make sure that that's properly.
Off what he's applying under, I think.
For the firm regarding Ken Shreve, most of his time has been in Nashville. Went out of business, went into some other line of work. I think he was teaching or something like that. And now he's back. As long as it's up to the standards of the current standards.
Yeah,
then it would be.
if it was done to the current.
Be under the current, as they are written today, standards is the way I take it. Was licensed,
But gave it up.
gave it up, and now
How
trying to
long
get
has
it
it
back.
been since you gave it up?
That's a couple of years. Case by case
Like
basis.
Atchison this morning.
I mean, at the end of the day, we could actually give him a license back.
Gave up his license here. Say it was basically during the downturn, so it's probably been. Better.
Right.
And so that's where they get it from. Shall not exceed. Oh, well, that's got to be less than.
It's written different. The new one's written different, I think.
It could be.
categories, and I thought, he may not have what I need. Well,
This is an FS application.
So funny. That anyone even resembles him.
who was that?
If I'm not correct. I am correct, right, Jay?
I believe we are.
We got one more year to put up with this junk. Play with new rules.
Yeah, he has a,
What happens is it puts him in a different box.
yeah, it does.
And it says it over here, it says,
I mean, he doesn't have 10 years experience.
All right.
and I'm gonna give you more.
Plats, 99%, they all comply. I'm tempted for the second plat. The first one, he's got it on there. He's got a written description on the first one, it's fine, got no problems. This one here. Which one is it?
It's,
What's the correct answer? If they were to put either one, now they don't even have to put either one of them, but if they put either one of them, which one is the correct answer? Or to be less than
I
one in
put
10,000.
exceeds 1 in 10,000. Better than or exceeds?
But is it less or is it greater? Is it more?
Are you, okay. Tennessee State. Just doesn't have it, does it? That's, I was afraid of that.
Just to try to make sure, I'm trying every way in the world to get it qualified, you just can't got it.
That's BS from East Tennessee State. FS.
Mr. Northcutt, do you want to appropriate?
Yes, sir. I'll do that.
That was good to go?
Jonathan Slim. Old John.
That's quick.
What'd you say?
January 16, he's out already. Speaking of out, I've got to.
One more for you. Bottom.
Review that one for me. On the plats, everything else is there. Used to be licensed, gave it up 6 years ago, gave up his license 6 years ago. With that kind of history, obviously looking at his plats is very professional. I mean, he knows what he's doing. The basis really is that I did not see a written description on his second plat. I really would like to get him approved. I really would. I mean, you can just tell from the plat. It's there. He's got
With what he's doing, what he
Yeah.
used to do.
but
Okay.
had his own company, and when the recession hit, couldn't keep. Right there, be good. Zoom in on it for me. One more click there. There you go. Pan over just a bit. you know, is there a description? Yeah, it is, but, you know. Obviously, what we're looking for is a meets and bounds, but,
Yeah.
I mean, he did that on his other.
I'm looking at a boundary
Oh, yeah, yeah,
as opposed to something that's platted.
yeah.
And
I agree.
I probably wouldn't write illegal on something. Yeah.
Until the attorney throws a fit and says, I gotta have a red description. I don't.
You mean you didn't? I said,
You're comfortable with saying it's okay, I'm good with changing my thing. I mean, I'm looking for a reason to change it is what I'm saying.
I really am comfortable with
I
saying
think
it's
so, too.
okay.
I think so.
Because I just think that's,
9 years and I'll change mine.
all right. As long as Cody doesn't. Welcome back.
So 5 or 4 or 3, whatever.
Hoots of experience.
Okay.
You know, although he applied under the AS. Upon further review, I changed my opinion on that, so I initialed it in March.
Now, the question is, what does he need to do?
The real exam.
I'm sorry. Accent. Now, I called him back on Monday because I had
Pending your receipt of the high school.
I vet high school experience as part of some of the other boards I work on, so it would be pay him once we get that proof to say.
I believe it's probably been high school education instead of master's.
Oh, wait a minute. He was good till now. Tommy Young was the supervisor. There it just
you
went.
knew you'd have to get one, didn't you?
And he spells it, is that goemetry? That's how he says it. I think you might be right.
Whereabouts?
Might be in. He'll be anyway, regardless of your.
We're almost done.
No, I'm not.
That's a
We're just
thick
having
one right
fun.
there. Thick one.
You'd have date night or anything, did you?
I have known him his entire life. His older brother has been one of my best friends for my
entire life.
man.
Me.
Do I hear a banjo? See that?
Tell me you
Oh.
can't talk to me, review an application.
It would be a conflict of interest. Hey, Tommy Young. You caught me in the middle of reviewing an application of some guy that claims to be. I literally am looking at his application, and it says here that he's your cousin. I mean, you could not have had better timing than this right here, because I literally was reading your letter. I said, from Tommy Young, and I looked down at my phone, Tommy Young. Hey, in all seriousness, let me call you back when I'm driving home, all right? All right. I'll send it to you. All right, see you. Or telling me about this guy, so I'm like, stop right there. He wants Jimmy's phone number. Well, that is just kind of weird, isn't it? I mean, that is just weird.
I know.
He's country from the word go. He's about what? Tommy about 6'2", isn't he?
Goats, that's what, yeah, you
We
raise
don't have no
goats.
children, we got goats.
Goats. Definitely know where you stand with him, and he tells you straight up.
Yeah, he's the one we're just waiting on.
He's got
proof,
everything covered.
you
He's
know.
approved, just pending on that. Masters in 10 years.
Yeah, I just felt like
Oh, the
we
circle's
had to
round.
at least take a look. Now, this one's open and shut.
Okay.
And, Mr. Lingerfeld confirmed by one. That he just simply turned around and tried to apply for the PA.
This thing folded back.
Yeah, those were,
Some of he had a sort of a flat standard. In other words to say they need to be like
Applicants wish they
18 by
did too.
24.
that would be great.
I really do think we should have an example plat.
Yeah, I mean, you know,
Really should.
we talked about that.
We
We
really
never
should do
got
something.
there.
Really should.
for it, not a problem.
That's our opinion about it.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm sure he will. With this one, we don't have the proof of education yet. That's the one I was talking to Mr. Kaufman about. He's applying with 10 years of experience in high school. He told me last week he was faxing his proof of
That makes more sense,
education.
but still.
I have not received it. I called him back and left a message, but I didn't get him on the phone. So we're short that. I'm assuming he's sent it or is about to send it. And so if you'll just look at it and make sure. We've got them all.
We got 'em all. That's what we've been looking for. Our little crew. Performed in compliance. Ready for somebody else.
You have to wait on them, 'cause I'm all in.
I looked for it too. There it is. Look down at the bottom. It's in the
Computed
legend.
position.
A computed position is what it is.
Doggone that, boss. Got more computer positions on there than this corner.
Guessing. Rejected.
He's the chairman of the board of, I'm pretty sure he's the chairman of that. I know he's definitely on
That
the board.
actually sounds familiar.
His name is Vic. It's not. This is not Chastain himself, but it is his survey.
Right, right. Yeah, I think I actually had to speak to Mr. Chastain.
I've seen some put taps on there.
Yeah, well, Benny had taps on his.
Looked at, or is that all done?
Guess we'll move back to where we was at then. Did you have a specific date?
On your desk there.
I think that concludes our activity there as far as the reviewing of the exams. I certainly appreciate everyone staying here late as it is getting up on, well, almost 6 o'clock. Certainly, we do have a couple other items on the agenda that we were not able to get to this evening. I think they were mostly discussion points for that matter. I don't know that there were any issues there that required any action by the board here, at least not for this afternoon. I think the last item that we need to cover is approval of PDHs for today's work. Does that sound right?
Yes, sir. If I might, I would like to make a request of Mr. McCormick, if I could. Trying to find my minutes. We have a few items left on our agenda that we didn't get to. Have some other things that we have not gotten to from previous agendas, and I would like to be able to kind of catch up so that when we get to our October meeting, work on the slate that we have for October. What I would like to propose, and it's only a proposal, it's your decision. I'd like to propose to have a meeting in September, later September. In order to accomplish, several things, one of which was in the director's report in our minutes from the last meeting, that you had brought up, Mr. McCormick, about streamlining our exam process. And over the last year, it's kind of been a hodgepodge. We've sort of made an effort at it, but we've got into something else real quickly for whatever reason. Actually had a sample application, and, we've looked at it, and I think we need to try to move on with that, because as Cody indicated earlier, I think you as the department are looking at trying to get things more where there can be and submitted that way and things of that nature. So we need to I think we need to kind of be able to streamline, to use your word again, the applications. But if we just kind of keep on putting them on there and don't actually have a time to really get to them, then I don't think we're going to do, hopefully, what you would like maybe done. And we'd like that also, because I think your enjoyment of our exercise through the last 3 hours would tell you that we probably got some stuff we need to do.
Well, and I think it's one. I appreciate that. I think you're speaking my language on trying to figure out a way to streamline the application process. And I think we had Kimberly, who was here earlier, and we already kind of started talking about some things. And I think we would love to be able to present some options to you about some ways that we see kind of how this application process, and Kimberly's been reviewing the entire division to impact how our processes. We were looking at standard processes, best practices that other programs are using, and there are programs that review all the applications. There's some that don't. I think I mentioned it to Mr. Kaufman, is that a vast majority of the division's applications are approved administratively, and so there's a number of things I think we could propose to you all to consider that could allow you for some efficiencies in the process, efficiencies for your licensees, and really make your time here as valuable as possible for you all. So I most certainly would want to have that conversation. I know as we're looking at it, I don't know if we would be able to get back to you as quick as September with some suggestions, because obviously I can tell you we're kind of focusing on making sure the day-to-day administration is working well. But I mean, I'm committed to do that, and so, in terms of, I'm September 5th, about a month and a half.
And we were looking at it being about roughly close to 2 months out, and then we'd have another meeting a month later, which might be possible.
And I think there's definitely do they have to set the meeting date today?
Just as long as it's properly noticed.
But could we kind of go back, because I think one of the things I think we can do for you all that would be helpful is to give you some options, and then kind of allow you some time to think about it, and kind of give you some best practices that we're using. And we're talking about applications, and in the effort to streamline online applications, we're trying to conform applications as simple as possible to match all of what we do, because there's most of the information that, as you can imagine, that we capture from licensees is the same across the board. It's the parts where it's not that require it. And so we're trying to make sure we've really kind of make sure you're not seeing things that you don't need to see. And so I like to get things done quickly, so I don't want to commit staff to something that maybe is unreasonable. If I could maybe I understand that's the date you're looking at. Could I get back? Do you care if I reach back out to you all and just
That's
kinda
fine. We're flexible with the
let
date.
you know?
It's
But
just
I think
suggestion.
the idea of the conversation that you're wanting to have is very much consistent with what I think we can do, and I definitely think there's some ways that we can make your all's experience more efficient.
I think too, a couple other things we talked about. I think we still have some loose ends with the exam process.
That's correct.
I would like to be able to get Ms. Martin's feel for where we're going legally as far as reviewing other rules or statutes, things of that nature. We haven't had that luxury. Obviously, as you well know, we've had a pretty full day.
I think I think I would love to be able to, if you're all amenable, I'd love to be able to pitch some other just general observations about, and I think one of the things that can be helpful for you all in this process with me being here is I do have the advantage of seeing, a lot of different professions, and so I think I could potentially offer you some feedback that could be helpful. I mean, some of you probably like, some of you won't, but I think some things that could be effective across the board to really, because ultimately from my perspective, the things that, and what I can talk about policy and all kinds of things, but the thing I'm most committed to is an effective administration, both the day of and your time here being a good use of your time, and then also making sure that we're creating a good experience for prospective licensees and licensees, and same goes for people that are trying to present complaints. So absolutely, we'll look at it. And I won't delay. I'll be quick to get back to you and tell you kind of where we are. And obviously, I can follow. If it's okay, I'll follow up with Mr. Kaufman, and we'll just do that.
Yeah, I can
Chairman
spread the word from
Kaufman. So great. So.
Okay.
I just want to thank you for your
Yeah.
consideration.
No,
And
absolutely.
that's the most important thing is because we haven't had that in the past. And it's great to have that consideration. And because like I say, I'd really like to kind of catch up. I just feel like we've been behind and I would like to catch up.
I appreciate that. Well, and like I said, I'll be quick to get back to you.
Okay, before we close up and adjourn, I do want to get approval for PDH hours of today. If I do a little math here, it looks like we started about 9. It's about 6 o'clock right now, minus a lunch and a couple breaks. I'm looking at about 7 hours.
Yes, sir.
Does that sound about right?
I think
All right.
that's right.
Motion to approve that?
Make a
moved.
motion.
All right, second?
All right, second that.
All in favor, say aye. Aye. All right, and before we adjourn, I do want to, couple items real quick here. I definitely want to acknowledge the staff that has gone above and beyond today, and today is just, I know, a little bit of, kind of like the top of the iceberg. All the work is done under the water, and I know you guys have worked literally weeks and probably months since our last meeting, certainly. And I sure appreciate everything that y'all have done. You've really, we were talking at lunch today about, boy, there is a bright sunshine out there right now with the way you guys are working. Just kudos to you and your staff and everything. Ms. Martin, your legal report's outstanding. Cody, you had all the applications ready to go. Great job there. And your insight was very valuable today too, keeping us in the line. So thumbs up to every one of y'all. Just outstanding job today. It really is noticeable, and your hard work is very much appreciated.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman and members. I did want to take a moment, and I know that just to say the staff has done a great job, and Cody, I know has particularly I'd want to point out. I think he's done a fantastic job. And as you all know, when you have a boss leave, it's a very difficult transition for anybody, and I just want to commend him. Personally, he's done a lot to make, for me, he's done a lot to help me get in this place. And so to do that, and really there's a lot of other staff here that work for me too that aren't, and with him that aren't here. But I just particularly wanted to take a moment to recognize the work he's done, particularly with Nicole leaving. And it's been made it a lot easier of a transition for me.
Recognize it's not an easy job, especially on his part with all the logistics behind it, but we certainly appreciate all the hard work on everybody's part. And I didn't want to leave here without recognizing that. And last thing of mine before we leave, I couldn't help but notice that there's somewhat of a void down here on the board today, with 3 of us being here and Miss Sue Braley. I think this might be the first time in my short tenure here that she has not been available with us. And certainly, probably for the majority of your 7 years plus,
She's
I
been
think it
here
was.
since 2004.
I'm glad you mentioned it. I intended to mention that in my director's report earlier. The governor has made a new appointment to the board, and so Riley has been replaced. And unfortunately, she was not able. I think that as the timing goes for those decisions, they happen, and then they try to get. They don't really necessarily look at our schedules, and so she couldn't get here in the short notice. But they've selected Betsy Summerford. She lives here in Nashville, from Knoxville, and so I think she's a very impressive person, and got great, varied experience, and I think you all will really get to that to your all's group. So I anticipate she'll be here at the next meeting. So, but we definitely appreciate. I know Ms. Braley had been on this board for a long time, and I know I can say for the record that we very much appreciate her service, and I know the governor very much does as well. So,
noticeably a void down there, and we certainly miss her and everything that she has done for us over the years, and certainly want to acknowledge her service. All right, any last points from anybody we need to bring up before we adjourn?
Make a motion, we adjourn.
All right, motion?
Second it.
Second, all approve, aye? Meeting adjourned.